such a good crowd. So thank you for that. So this is a regular meeting of the Carefree Town Council. It will come to order. Please take a roll call. Silent roll call.
Mayor, I have Councilmember Delicio over the phone.
Okay, excellent.
I'm
so
here.
We have 7 council members in attendance. First item is Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Bob Morris, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. This is the first time I can remember having the mayor of Cave Creek here with us, and I can't remember when we had a Carefree mayor at a Cave Creek council meeting. So you have to put him to work. So thank you, Mayor. And for those who don't know, this is the first time we've live streamed a meeting. So this meeting is live streamed on YouTube. First time we've done that. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So all items listed here under are considered to be routine by the Town Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be discussed separately. So item number 1, approval of the January 3rd, 2023 Town Council regular meeting minutes. Item number 2, acceptance into the public record of the January 2023 paid bills. Item 3, acceptance of the cash receipts and disbursements report for November 2022. And item 4, acceptance of the cash receipts and disbursements report for December 2022. Are there any comments or questions from council? Any item you'd like to pull? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the consent agenda? Oh, we need a motion. Please make a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second? Second. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is call to the public. So call to the public, we ask that you fill out a little chit like this, put down your name and address and what item you'd like to speak about. So the public may address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of call to the public, individual members of the town council may respond to criticism. We may ask staff to review a matter, direct staff to study a matter, or ask the matter to be placed on a future agenda. And we ask that comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. So this evening we have 2 chits in hand. One from Tom Raid, or Ratty. Okay, thank you, sir. Next up, Mr. Rich Christopher. Mr. George Nelson. So, I'm not sure what you're gonna talk about. If you're gonna talk about anything that's not on the agenda, you're welcome now, but if you'd like to speak about, say, fire or something, we can have an opportunity during that segment. So I won't forget, or remind me if I forget. And I believe this is Chief Soul. And the same for you, sir. You can, welcome to speak now or later. Okay. So that closes call to the public, and we'll come back to Mr. Nelson later in the evening. And I would just say, I think we all are in favor of good civil discussions based on facts and without exaggerated rhetoric from either side of the discussion. Next up is current events.
Yeah. It's all wrapped up in Chief Soul's talk. We have a Carefree Garden seminar coming up this week on February 11th. And it's on the water conservation and efficiency. And we're going to be talking about plants that do well in the desert. So it would be a really good time to, because I think, if I'm right, most of the water that's used is outside and landscaping. So if we could get some plants and grasses and trees that are desert dwellers, we can save a lot on our landscaping costs. I think that's it.
Yeah, so what the Vice Mayor was talking about, so about 70% of water used at residential homes is used outside, swimming pools, fountains, irrigation. So it's a great program to help get your desert landscape under control, get the right plants in there, kind of manage the use of your outside water better, because it becomes more and more important as time goes on. All right, that closes current events. Next up is item number 7. Presentation by the town of Cave Creek regarding the evolution of fire and emergency services. So this evening we have guests from Cave Creek with us today. We have, of course, Mayor Bob Morris, Town Manager Kerry Dyrick, and the Director of Community Risk Reduction Emergency Fire and Medical Services, Jim Ford. It's quite a title. And just before we get up, Jim Ford has actually a very impressive career as a fireman. So I believe it's 49 years. 47? Okay, I was close. The internet is sometimes misleading. But you started at Rural Metro a long time ago when you were 19 years old. Then moved to City of Scottsdale when City of Scottsdale moved from the Rural Metro model to their own model. And now you're working in the town of Cave Creek and providing fire administration there. So thank you very much for joining us, and please let us know what you think about how Cave Creek has evolved to be where they are today in terms of their fire service.
Well, thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm happy to be here. As was introduced, I'm Jim Ford. I'm a little bit of a background. As you mentioned, I started with Rural Metro in 1975. For 30 years, I worked for Rural Metro Fire Department. I was part of the transition from Rural Metro to the City of Scottsdale Municipal Department in 2005. As it relates to this area out here specifically, we built my dad's house in Cave Creek in 1971, and I was around and a teenager and crazy enough to used to hunt at Carefree Ranch before it turned into Desert Mountain, back when they still had the fences up and all that. So very familiar with the area. And what I've been asked to do today is just kind of go over the information on how we did it in Cave Creek and why we did it, and some of the outcomes. And I would kind of like to reiterate, there's no way I'm here to bash anybody. There's no way I'm here to impact the firefighters, because I know how hard they work, especially the Rural Metro ones, and what they do. It's just that sometimes you get the support you need and sometimes you don't. And so we'll tell you how we got to where we're at today in Cave Creek. So if I can, there we go. Do you have the same PowerPoint on your screens up there? Okay, good. Am I too close to the mic? Am I?
You sound great. Thank you.
Sound okay? All right. All right. So anyway, this is kind of the what I'm going to go through today. It's just kind of the overview. We talked about the introductions and why I'm here and how long I've been around. And I am much older than I look, I hope, but I'm not real positive about that either. But the background and histories and why did Cave Creek do what it did and now. And let's talk about some of the facts about what happened and what's going to happen and what will happen. It all started with those two big fires that we had in Cave Creek in 2000, May of 2000, or 2020, I'm sorry. And if you recall, the biggest difference between Cave Creek and Carefree at that time is that those fires happened in Cave Creek. And because they happened in Cave Creek, the focus was on the town of Cave Creek. Those fires just as easily could have happened in Carefree, between Carefree and Desert Mountain. How many of you were here for the Cave Creek Complex fire in 2005? You saw all that and how that happened, and the same thing, Rural Metro and the region and the Toronto Forest, we all worked to put that out. Scottsdale fire was just coming online at that point in time. And so those fires can happen anywhere. The reason that and we got to where we are today is because we had those two back-to-back fires in Cave Creek. In your packet that I handed out to you, there's a list of different documents, and so as I talk about anything today, it'll be backed up by the documents that the council has, and you can look at that. And if you look at through those documents, if you're thumbing through them as I'm speaking, and there's any questions that you have about any of those documents, I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. But again, after the initial fires in May of 2020, the town of Cave Creek got a letter from the city of Phoenix on behalf of the region, not just city of Phoenix, but on behalf of the region, and says we were happy to help on those two big fires, but the feeling is that the towns need to take responsibility for their fire protection and their emergency services. And that Cave Creek, if you don't do something to change your emergency services and upgrade your emergency services, you're not going to get the same resources that came to those two fires. We just can't do it. And I'll show you a map a little bit later on of what responded to those fires and how that impacted those other communities. Because there was a tremendous impact to those other communities doing the mutual aid, and we'll talk about mutual aid and automatic aid and answer those questions for you. But there was a huge impact on the region for those two communities. And so once the Cave Creek got that letter, they looked at it and they said we need to do something. So they took some steps to address this. And they didn't know exactly what they needed to do. The difference between the Rural Metro here is it's a master contract. There was a master contract in Cave Creek. It was a subscription service. And in Cave Creek, only about 40 to 45% of the residents subscribed and supported the fire service. So that was another little bit of an issue that they had down there. So what occurred was Cave Creek started working towards how are we going to do this. One of the things you need to do is you need to address the risk for your community, and you need to understand what you need to have and what resources you need to have. And so Cave Creek did an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Scottsdale, and the city of Scottsdale loaned me to the town of Cave Creek for the first year. So I came out in December of 2020 to evaluate and look at what the options were. And as part of that, I dealt with everybody that's in the automatic aid system. I dealt with Phoenix and Mesa and Glendale and Peoria and Daisy Mountain and Rural Metro. I met with the Rural Metro chiefs and talked about what was the right way to do things and what did they want to do. Now, a lot of my initial meetings were with the council and in executive session, and a lot of the stuff we talked about was what do you as the council and the leaders of Cave Creek want? What is your outcome? What is your goal? And based on the letters and the communications that the town had received, it was very clear to me and very clear from the leaders of Cave Creek that they wanted to have a service equal to the automatic aid system. They did not want to be shut out of the regional automatic aid system. They did not feel that as a small community they could by themselves support their own standalone fire department. So we went through the whole process of looking at what it costs, what the resources needed to be, what the town needed to do, and we worked on that. We worked on some of the discussions and some of the things that people just don't seem to understand, specific options. So one of I said again, the mutual aid versus automatic aid was one of the big questions. And you heard a little bit about that tonight, and you'll hear a lot about it as we go forward. And the difference being that mutual aid is when one fire department calls for assistance from another fire department, and another fire department decides if they can or cannot send resources to assist. And I want to focus a little bit on the term mutual. And so if you're getting mutual aid from a rural metro station that has 3 people and 1 medic on an engine, and it goes into Scottsdale as an example, but then Scottsdale sends mutual aid and they send 1 engine with 4 people and 2 medics, in their mind, that's not mutual. okay? Yeah, you're getting an engine for an engine, but you're not getting the resources for the resources. And that carries throughout the region. It's not just Scottsdale. That's the same with Phoenix, same with Glendale. Mutual means mutual. And it's been mutual aid for an awful lot of years, and finally the region said, we don't believe that that's the case anymore. And now automatic aid, the difference is you are under contract with the regional fire services. And you're under contract for dispatch, and you're under contract for training, and you're under contract for responses, and what goes to each response or each type of call. And there's no options. I mean, you're either in the contract or you're out of the contract. So if the town of Carefree has a large issue and they're under automatic aid, they're gonna get all the resources that's available with the region to come. If they're under mutual aid, then it's optional. And as I talk about that a little bit, I believe in the packet is a letter from Chief Shannon with the city of Scottsdale, who said, I've looked at this, I've canceled the mutual aid agreement with Rural Metro. They didn't have one with the town. There was not one between the towns, but I've canceled the mutual aid agreement with Rural Metro because I don't believe that we're getting the same both ways. We don't believe that it's mutual. And so we will come on life safety issues if there's an identified life safety issue, but we're not going to come just to cover calls, and we're not going to come just to perform regular foul ground operations. It has to be a life safety issue. And that has pretty much taken out through Scottsdale, through Daisy Mountain, through Phoenix. That's kind of where you're at right now. Your mutual aid is you're going to request it, and if it's a life safety issue, then they'll probably come, but they're not going to stay. And an example of that was for the cake house that you had a fire last year. Mutual aid was requested, mutual aid came, saw that there was no life safety issues, and they left. And that left the Rural Metro firefighters by themselves to handle that fire from start to finish without any backup. If there would have been a second incident in Cave Creek, then it would have been, again, extended response. And so it's very important to understand the difference between mutual aid and automatic aid, because automatic aid, as I mentioned, is an actual contract. If the closest Scottsdale station is out, the next station has to come. If not, they're out, then the closest Phoenix station has to come. The next appropriate unit has to be dispatched from the regional dispatch center. And we could talk a little bit more about what goes into that. So we identified the requirements for automatic aid. As I mentioned, since it is a contract, there's specific requirements. There's specific training, there's specific staffing, there's specific dispatch requirements. That's in your packet. We can talk a little bit about that. And then the community options. Once we went through all of this, again, I went back to the leadership of Cave Creek, the mayor and council. Gary, can I have a water? Do you have a water? I'm trying to talk a little bit fast, if that's okay. Thank you. So we went back to the Cave Creek Council and said, here's your options, and I'll go over that with you. And you have some similar options. They're not exactly the same because your services were a little bit different. But again, I already just talked a lot about mutual aid and the assistance and the regional automatic aid. Again, it's not an option if you're part of the system. The National Fire Protection Association, who is kind of our guiding organization, who tells us and has committees and works through everything nationally on how to get the different parts, all the way from sprinkler systems to hazardous materials response to dispatch. The National Fire Protection Association has a standard that talks about staffing and talks about resources, and they've done a whole bunch of testing, and the testing is for a full alarm assignment. And a full alarm assignment is considered a typical 2,000 square foot house. For a typical 2,000 square foot house, an initial assignment, a single family dwelling, is classified as a lower hazard event, but even then, to have an effective response and an effective force, 16 personnel should be initially dispatched. Okay, that's for any single family type of home. So the question is, what gets dispatched and how far away are they for that initial dispatch? For Cave Creek now, when we have a dispatch for that, we get responses from 3 different departments. For Carefree now, if you have a dispatch for a single family house, then you can ask and Chief Stoll can tell you what response for Carefree. But I don't believe it's 16 people. I don't believe it's 16 on the initial dispatch. Now, that doesn't say that the first truck getting there and the first 3 people that get there or 4 people can't put that initial fire out, but for a typical house fire, working house fire, this is the standard that's needed to give you the protection levels you need. And that's set up by, again, by the National Fire Protection Association. That's not made up by Scottsdale or by Jim or by anybody else. That's NFPA standards. So that's where those numbers come from. What are you getting for response? When you're doing, we just went through an insurance service organization grading and very risk. And when they come in, they're gonna look at what responds and how far away does it respond to your structures and to your houses, and they're gonna grade your community on that. And we just went through that. And you do get credit for automatic aid, you get a little bit of credit for mutual aid, but it's not the same because it's not the same dispatch every time, okay? Talking about the mutual aid agreements in the city of Scottsdale, now there's been some comments that I've heard that have been brought up that says, well, Scottsdale's still gonna come. They're fire guys and they're still gonna come. And to tell you the truth, we do wanna come, and the firefighters do wanna come, and they're still gonna show up for life safety issues, but they can only do what their department will allow them to do. You've got responses from Chief Shannon and from the city council on Scottsdale when they canceled this mutual aid agreement. If there's any questions about where the city of Scottsdale stands on this, watch that council meeting, because it was very clear what the mayor and council thought about continuing that, and they did cancel that mutual aid agreement with Rural Metro. The second part of that is Councilman Millhaven and what she thought, and Councilman Millhaven was around when we did the transition in 2005. And there was a lot of the similar discussions with Scottsdale when we did that transition in 2005, because at the time, we're saying the same thing. Well, we're used to 3-person engines, and we're used to covering this way or that way. And it came back to the city that this is not an option. If you want to be a part of the party, you want to be a part of the group, you want to be a part of the service level that we're doing here, you have to do this. And so Scottsdale did, as she says there, came through with the resources and figured out a way to end up in doing that. And so there's a lot of other things that say, well, Scottsdale's gonna do this or they're gonna do that. Well, I live in the city of Scottsdale still. I wish I lived in Cave Creek. My dad's house is still out here, but I still live in Scottsdale. And the city of Scottsdale, I still watch the council meetings once in a while. It shows you how boring I am most of the time, but those meetings, they're very clear now on what their position is with helping other communities, and Rio Verde is kind of the latest example of that. With the water system. Whether I agree with that or not is not the point. I'm just telling you that that's the tack that the city of Scottsdale has taken. So if you think that they're gonna all of a sudden change what they've already written to you and given you, just because, I don't think that that's the case, or just because it's the right thing to do, I don't know that that's the case. That's not what I'm seeing as I watch those council meetings, but again, that's my impression. So the automatic aid requirements, this was a big discussion point with Cave Creek and the leadership down there is, okay, what does it take to become a part of the automatic aid? And part of it is you have to be dispatched by the regional dispatch center with the automatic vehicle locators. That way they know exactly where the closest unit is. So for example, if a Scottsdale truck happens to be coming up Tom Darlington and there's a call on Scottsdale or Tom Darlington and Carefree Highway, and that's the closest unit, it's going. It doesn't matter if it's in Cave Creek or if it's in Carefree. If a Phoenix unit happens to be going down Carefree Highway and it's closest, the automatic vehicle locator will tell the dispatch that's the closest unit that goes. Cut and dried, that's what that does. So that allows them to manage the whole system. So if we have a major incident in one area, then they can move additional resources to help cover those areas for backup. You're not just stripping the area, you're being able to cover that stuff. So that allows the dispatch center to control all of that. The system wants you to address your common needs, your first due needs. You know, most of the calls in Cave Creek, and I handed out a list of our calls for the past year in Cave Creek. I track those, that's the first sheet that I think you have. And they want you to be able to handle almost all of your calls by yourself. If you have a larger incident, then they're willing to come and help, but they're not expecting to cover a lot of the calls in your individual communities. And so like for Cave Creek, for example, last year, we had a total of 630 calls in Cave Creek. 467 of those were EMS calls, emergency medical calls, 74%. I'm pretty sure it's close to that here in Carefree. And so that our one unit was able to handle most of those calls. And it was mentioned earlier, how many times do you lose your units? Well, in Cave Creek last year, 48 times our unit went to assist the other regional operations. Only 48 times, twice a month. Our unit left Cave Creek, an average of twice a month, to go and assist on other units. And some of those were pretty big incidents. One of them was a firefighter call for help with a working house fire and collapse in Tatum Ranch. And our truck was second due to assist that. And so only 48 times. So total, we went on 678 calls last year. On our unit, went on 678 calls. So that was one of the questions that was brought up a little bit earlier. We tracked that, and we tracked that very closely. Now, conversely, this was given to our council, and conversely, for those 630 calls, we ended up having, I brought the wrong sheet, but we ended up having about 1,300 auto aid units come to our calls. And what that means is when you have a structure call, you're going to get 5 or 6 units. You're going to get the response that you need. You have a gas leak or a hazardous materials incident, you're going to get the 5 or 6 units that you need. So we over 1,500 times we had those units in the town of Cave Creek, or at least dispatched to Cave Creek to help with those incidents. A mountain rescue is not a one truck incident. You need assistance to protect your firefighters and to protect the people that you're trying to rescue. So we ended up getting a lot more resources come to assist us on the major incidents, but we were able to handle our primary incidents, and that's what the region wants you to do. It requires a standard for command officers, it requires a standard for training, requires a standard for response. You know you're gonna get 3 engines and a ladder and a battalion chief, or maybe 2 battalion chiefs, every single time there's a structural call dispatched. It's not, well, you're gonna get 1 truck and we'll see if we can find some more, or we're gonna get you 2 trucks, but the second one's coming from far away. You're gonna get the 3 closest engines and ladder that's to that incident, every time, standard response. The training part of it is, we just sent 15, or, well, we didn't send 15, we sent, I think, 12 folks through the regional training center. And they went through with flying colors. They did terrific. But what that means is, in theory, you could take the crew from Cave Creek's fire station and put them on a Scottsdale truck, and they're going to operate the same. You could take them and put them on a Glendale truck, and they're going to operate the same. And if we needed that, something happened to a crew for ours, in theory, we could take a crew from Peoria and put them on our truck, because the basic operations are the same, and they're tested the same, and they're made sure that they do that. And that's tracked, and that's part of the tracking that I give to the town of Cave Creek every quarter. I give them a report on how that works out. The full staffing is established. If you want to be part of the regional automatic aid, you have to do full staffing. You have to have a 4-person engine company with a captain, a driver or engineer to operate that vehicle, and 2 firefighters. 2 of those 4 have to be medics. That goes back to what's mutual. If I get a truck from Phoenix, it's going to be 4-person. If they get our truck goes into Phoenix, they know it's going to be 4-person. If a Scottsdale truck comes in, we know that the staffing is going to be consistent, and that's mutual. This is automatic aid, but that's mutual. That's one of the big hang-ups for this. And then again, these are contracts. It's a full intergovernmental agreement and a contract that you get that. So Phoenix Dispatch can't arbitrarily say, well, we don't want to send 3-in-1s to fires in Cave Creek. We don't want to do that. Or when a brush fire happens in the summer at a high peak of time, that's an incredibly highly staffed and high response with units from all of the areas up here with all their brush trucks and their tankers and tenders, and everybody's coming. So you get an increased dispatch and increased response because they want to get on it fast. They don't want it to turn into a Cave Creek Complex fire. We don't want it to turn into an Ocotillo fire. And so they're going to get that heavier response up front. So that's all in the contract. And the CALSC is the Central Arizona Life Safety Council. That's a committee that's made up of, there's 2 permanent members, which is the Phoenix Fire Chief and the Mesa Fire Chief, being the 2 largest departments in the valley. And then you have 2 fire chiefs that rotate from the East Valley, 2 fire chiefs that rotate from the West Valley. And they put together the committees, the regional committees that look at everything that the fire service does. And if you're not familiar with the fire service, there's an awful lot of tentacles that go down, whether it's EMS calls or hazardous materials calls or any of that type of stuff. And so all of that is done regionally and done with committees regionally so that everybody stays on the same page. And so they all do it consistently. So this is what I referred to a little bit earlier. This is a map of the fire stations here in the Northeast Valley. Carefree is the one right in the middle. You can see Cave Creek to the west. Up to the east is the new Scottsdale Station, or newer Scottsdale Station. I always think it's new because it was the last one that I helped build. You have the one down off of Pima Road, down off of Jomax. You have the two Phoenix fire stations off of Cave Creek Road. The one on the west side on 24th Street is a future fire station. It's going to go in with the agreement between Cave Creek and Daisy Mountain, and you have the Daisy Mountain units. So, for example, if you have a residential structure fire dispatched, you're probably going to get the station off of Pima Road because that's a ladder company, and then the three closest engines. Just cut and dried. You can just look and see which ones, depending on where it is, and depending on which part of town it is, whether it's on the east side or west side of town. So the reason I put this up was because for the two fires in Cave Creek, I went back and checked the records, and the black dots are all the stations in the regional automatic aid system north of the Central Arizona project, okay? All the red dots are the units from that station that came to Cave Creek for those fires. This is what led to the letter from the City of Phoenix and Phoenix Fire Department in the region saying, we can't strip out this much of the community for somebody that's not a part of the system. You're just not a part of the system. And so, like I said, it happened twice, that this is what led to the letter and led to the ability for them to do that and to contact Cave Creek about it. And as I said early on, the difference between Cave Creek and Carefree is that this happened in Cave Creek and it didn't happen over here on the border between Desert Mountain and Tonto in these areas up here. It could have just as easily happened in your north part of your community as it did in Cave Creek, but it didn't. So that's what led to the whole discussion of why now? Why are we looking at this? Why are we trying to address this? And that's what led to Cave Creek being kind of put on notice. And as again, you guys have kind of been put on notice from Scottsdale and everybody else. And we've been partners for a long time, but at some point in time, I think I had a Cave Creek council person at the time, I won't name who it was here, who said it's time for Cave Creek to grow up and put on our big boy pants. We're not the same community that it was in '71 when I moved out here, not the same community in 2005 when we switched from rural metro to the city of Scottsdale. You're different then. That's been 15 years plus years ago. The communities aren't staying the same. The communities are changing, and the communities need to address the service levels that they need and they want. Again, it's up to you as policymakers. I'm not a policymaker, but it's up to the policymakers to say what's the level of service we want. And so it's very clear what your options are. Again, these are the two big fires. Now there's other major incidents that have occurred where mutual aid used to come. We had mutual aid in Cave Creek at the Buffalo Chip fire. If you'll take a look at that picture, I didn't put it in here, but if you take a look at that picture, you have a ladder from Phoenix and a ladder from Scottsdale on the Buffalo Chip fire. Again, I'm not going to speak too much for the other fire chiefs, but today I'll bet that those two trucks wouldn't have gone to Cave Creek if it was still mutual aid, given what they have said. Because that's a structure surrounding drawn, there's not a life safety issue at that point in time. Those resources are going to go back to the communities that they're initially supposed to protect. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but I'm just telling you what my interpretation of that is. So here's Cave Creek, like I said, is a little bit different. Here's kind of the options for the town of Cave Creek. One of their options was they didn't have to do anything. They looked at this in 2008, I believe it was, and they opted not to do anything. They looked at it earlier. Their option again in 2020 was not to do anything, leave it alone. Some people wanted that to happen because they didn't want change, but that was an option. But according to the leadership of the town, it's time for us to grow up and address what we need to address. We could require membership with rural metros and the businesses, make them contract with rural metro. That turns into a whole other series of issues with contract issues and the way that works. we could create a new community or regional fire district, and there was a lot of discussion about this, or possibly annexing into another fire district, and the fire district would have been Daisy Mountain, because that's the only one that's adjacent to us. The issue with both, I talked to a few leaders from both communities. The issue with that is if you annex into a fire district, then you lose all control of that. The district board then sets the mill rates for their taxes and sets the level of service. And so neither community was willing to say, yeah, we'll just annex in, and then whatever the Daisy Mountain Fire District charges, the Daisy Mountain Fire District charges. Neither community was too keen on that idea, but that was an option. And that takes it away from you, and you just say, hands off, okay, we don't have to do that. Develop and install a standalone Cave Creek Fire Department. And we looked at that seriously. But the issue with that is that these are small communities, and to run a fire department is not a easy or cost-effective service. If we run our own fire department, you have to have the support for all of the backup stuff that you have to have as a fire department. You have to have people that are going to buy your equipment. You have to have a medical director. You have to have EMS training directors. You have to have hazardous materials training directors. You have to contract out for those. You have to have the support system that both town halls have a support system to support the structure, but you would increase dramatically. The town of Cave Creek would have more than doubled in size to put on the resources that they needed to run their own fire department. And so the option for us ended up saying, well, can we contract with an automatic aid provider that already has all those skills and already has all those resources? You know, Scottsdale and Phoenix and Daisy Mountain already have a medical director. They already have the paramedic training in place. They already have the firefighter regional training in place, like we talked about. They already have the mechanics that can work on the vehicles. They already have the people that can get us the equipment or help us get the equipment. So the contract was we will pay for the initial first responders and the equipment that we need for Cave Creek, and then we will pay a portion of the overhead for the Daisy Mountain Fire District as our part. We're paying 1/6 of the overhead for the Daisy Mountain Fire District because we're 1/6 of their stations. And that idea came from the city of Phoenix and Paradise Valley. When Scottsdale transitioned out to the city of Scottsdale Fire Department, Paradise Valley was being served by Rural Metro, and Paradise Valley came to Scottsdale and said, would you serve us? Would you like to do that? And even at that time, the city of Scottsdale said, no, we would not. We're too busy trying to do our own transition. And so their option was to go to the city of Phoenix with a similar type of agreement. So the town of Paradise Valley bought the properties, built 2 fire stations, and the town of Paradise Valley bought the trucks and equipment, and the city of Phoenix staffs those 2 stations and dispatches, and it runs as another battalion of Phoenix. That's where, when we looked at all the options, we said, why couldn't we do that with either Scottsdale or Phoenix or Daisy Mountain with an automatic aid? Why couldn't we buy our own station? Why couldn't we buy our own fire truck? Why couldn't we buy our own equipment, pay for our own staffing, and then pay a portion of the overhead, which is tremendous in the fire service, to do that? And so that's how we did it. That's how we put it together like that, and we started talking with the 3 different communities. And what you won't have is you won't have a bid process. You won't have Scottsdale bid against Daisy and bid against Phoenix. They're just not going to do that. So we had those discussions with those 3 chiefs, and it was determined for Cave Creek the best option for us was to contract with Daisy Mountain, since we were adjacent to them on the west side, and it was not that big of a stretch to absorb us. And so that's what we did. So doing that, putting all that together, doing the additional training, getting the equipment that we needed, we were able to put this together in a year. Like I said, I started in December of 2020, and in January of 22, on January 3rd, the Cave Creek Fire Department went live. January 3rd, we went live. We already had hired the people, we had already trained the people, we had already got most of the resources, we'd already bought the fire station that we needed, we already did that. And so on January 3rd, any calls for service in Cave Creek went to the sheriff, just like it does for Carefree, and then it went to the City of Phoenix Regional Dispatch, and then we were live. And so that's when we started being a member of the automatic aid system. Knowing what we did, we then quickly, and it's in your packet, we quickly petitioned the CALS, the Central Arizona Life Safety Committee, for inclusion into the automatic aid system. And seeing what we did, they were comfortable with the training, they were comfortable with the resources, they were comfortable with everything we did, and they approved on January 7th the town of Cave Creek being in the automatic aid system. And then since that point in time, we've been operating as a full member of the system. So I wrote down some of the stuff, you know, what is the risk for the community? And the risk for the community is almost any community can handle the day-to-day stuff. But if it's more than just a car accident or a heart attack, that's where you're putting yourself and your residents at risk. If you need additional assistance, where are you going to get it from and where's it coming from? The cost, what Cave Creek was able to do is we looked at our budgeting. We had talked about a lot of different ways to pay for this, but the town and brought in some outside assistance to evaluate what we could do. And with the sales tax revenues that the town has, the town was able to pay for the service without increasing any property tax or increasing any sales tax. Now, whether that stands or not, I know the mayor's here. That might or might not stand, you know, that as the system grows, or if anything we need to do, we're going to talk about a second station. But initially, that's how it happened. And so the people that were paying for Rural Metro did not have to pay anymore. The people that weren't paying were getting a free ride. They still got a free ride. But the difference is the level of service. Okay, the level of service. And so if you happen on an accident at Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway, it's almost 50-50 that you're going to see a Phoenix truck or a Daisy Mountain or a Scottsdale truck versus the Cave Creek truck, because it's right in that area and it's the closest unit that's going to go. The question was brought up about out-of-area responses, and I already addressed that. We did that 48 times for the entire year. And then I don't understand this question, Chief, maybe you can help me. A delayed response to a Cave Creek fire. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about or what you're referencing. The only thing I can imagine is that we did have one fire in the middle of Cave Creek on a Friday morning, I think it was, in the trailer park just behind the down there. And our truck was on an EMS call at the time, and Scottsdale and Phoenix were the first two engines on that, but there was absolutely no damage to any of the structure because they got there so fast, and they put that out, and they had the additional resources. It wasn't just one truck. Those two got there almost the same time. So I don't know if that's what you're referring to, that there was a delayed response, but I would argue that the automatic aid system worked exactly like it's supposed to. We were handling our first initial incident, and the backup units from our partners got there and stopped. There was no damage. I went to the fire. I said, "Oh, great! You know, here we go, a trailer fire in the middle of the town." And it was actually a fifth wheel that was parked next to their store, and you could not tell. There was no damage to the store. There was no damage. There was damage to the fifth wheel, obviously, but that was it. So I would argue that system worked exactly like it was supposed to work, and stopped what could have been a huge loss in a trailer fire. If that's what you're referring to. Other than that, I'm not aware of any other ones where we had any kind of delayed response, because again, it's automatic. If the first truck's out, the next closest truck's coming. It's that simple. And I'd be happy to answer any questions from any of you that you have. And again, I'll just real quick go over the packet that I left you. Is all the letters that led to the reasons and the why, which was a big question. Why did we do this? And so just going through those letters, you get the Phoenix letter, you have the Phoenix Fire Department letter to Chief Davis saying we're not going to do this anymore. You have the Scottsdale Fire letter to Carefree saying we're going to cancel that mutual aid. I did put in there the November of 2003, the Rural Metro Fire Department letter of cancellation from Rural Metro to Jan Dolan, who was the city manager of Scottsdale at the time, and then her letter back to the employees of the Scottsdale Fire Department. And I don't want to get into that too far, but I can answer any of those questions. I was on the front lines for all of that stuff. If you recall, the city of Scottsdale actually took a vote, which I've heard some things about that here. They took a vote, do we need to keep rural metro, or should we go to a municipal department? And I think it was 2002. And the city residents voted, it's very similar to here with the service that they got. The city residents voted 66% to 33% to stay with rural metro. The issue was, and again, you're gonna have to believe me that I was there if I did this. The issue was that rural metro, and as fire chiefs, we had said, this is what you're gonna have to do, which is a lot of the stuff that you heard today. We're gonna have to go to 4-person staffing, we're gonna have to go to three shifts, we're gonna have to do all that type of stuff. The city of Scottsdale said, yes, we will do that if the vote comes in for rural metro, and it did. And then we met and said, okay, leadership of rural metro, now we have to put all this together. And the rural metro board canceled the discussions and came back a little bit later and sent the letter that you see in here to the city of Scottsdale and said, we're gonna cancel the contract when it runs out, we're not gonna renew. It was not the city of Scottsdale that canceled that contract. There's a lot of people that think that it was the city of Scottsdale that canceled that. They did not. It was rural metro that canceled that contract. And so we had 18 months to then do similar, what you're talking about, is put together that fire department and be ready to respond starting July 1st. But there's a lot of misconception about that, which is why I included those in there. There's a lot of discussion about why rural metro can't get into CASC and the letters for that. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of history for that, and I don't need to go into that unless you want me to. And then, again, the discussions about auto aid requirements. And then what Cave Creek did is we actually, with the council and direction of the leadership and the policymakers, we did resolutions to show the region that we were serious. So early on, I think it was in March of 21, the council, after looking at the initial stuff and looking at the initial costing and everything else, they put a resolution together that said we are going to take the steps we need to become a member of the automatic aid system. So that set my task on how I was going to do that. I was going to find out what were the options and how we could do that. But the council, again, gave me that direction, and as the policymakers, that's what they were supposed to do. And so we did it by resolution. So then we were able to go to the region and say, we're serious about this. This is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to do this. And the region was able to support us fully in that endeavor. And then again, there's some other ones in there about being accepted into the automatic aid system. So that's kind of a backup packet. Anything I talked about today, I can support. I can give you the statistics and the data or whatever you need on it, or it's in those letters that I've handed out to you. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have for me, or if there's anything else that came up. I tried to, like I said, write down some of the initial comments that were being made, and I want to be, again, very clear. I worked for Rural Metro and Lou Weissman, who was the founder, for 30 years. I was a pallbearer at his wedding. I knew him personally. And so I understand what the firefighters are going through. This is not about the service that they try to provide, it's about the support that they sometimes get, and the decisions, the corporate decisions that have been made. And so I might or might not agree with a lot of those things, but as far as the firefighters go, they're going to do the best they can, and they're going to work their butt off to the point where they could hurt themselves. That's what I was worried about in Cave Creek, is that they don't have the support that they need. And so with that, again, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all might have for me.
Well, thank you, sir. Before I turn over to the council, one question about emergency medical service. We spent a lot of time talking about fire. So how does, if someone has a heart attack, the fire truck goes, maybe you could explain why that happens, the training of those on that truck, and that sort of thing. And then also, how, in the past year, the move to automatic aid, has that made, within Cave Creek, how has that changed? Is there a discernible change? Just fill us in on that.
Okay, I'll talk about the medical services first. That's one of the reasons you saw the staffing, the requirements is 4-person staffing, 2 medics and 2 non-medics on there. And you have to think of this a little bit different. I'm from back east, I'm from Pittsburgh, and so I understand volunteer fire departments and EMS systems back east and stuff and how it's different than out west. But you have to understand that the fire service in the western part of the United States has taken over the emergency medical service. That's because our stations are closer, our stations are better positioned. We can get to these calls much quicker and much faster with the equipment. You have to think of an engine now with the 4-person staffing and the 2 medics. You have to think of that as a mobile emergency room. And I was in charge of emergency medical service for Scottsdale for a while. My medical director would tell everybody when we'd go talk to different groups, he goes, that is a mobile emergency room. They can do everything that I can do in the ER with the exception of surgeries. And so everybody says, well, why don't you just scoop them and run anymore? You don't scoop and run anymore. You let the medics use their drugs, use their equipment, use their telemetry, and take the best shot before they transport. So it's almost 2 different services. You have your first aid service and first medical service, which is your firefighters and your fire trucks. And your second part of it is a transport service. And the transport service is the ambulance. And a lot of people don't realize, but the transport service is completely controlled by the Arizona Department of Health Services. It's not, if you do it here, you're not going to control the ambulance system. The ambulance system is going to be controlled by the Arizona Department of Health Services. They're going to set the rates, they're going to set the staffing, they're going to set the the equipment that goes on that vehicle, all of that. It's 2 separate services. The first is your emergency medical response now. The second is the transport. And the transport can be initially dispatched. In Phoenix, they don't initially dispatch. They let the engine get there and decide if they need that transport service. I think they might have 10 or 15 ambulances for the city of Phoenix. They don't have that many. It doesn't go every single time. With us, what we do now is in Cave Creek, we have an engine, and we also do have an ambulance. Daisy Mountain, we petitioned the Department of Health Services to expand our what's called a certificate of necessity, and the entire town of Cave Creek is now under the Daisy Mountain certificate of necessity, and they moved an ambulance into our station. Now, is it there all the time? No. Does it need to be there all the time? No. You still want those 4 guys to initially get there to stabilize and support that system. And so that's how the system in the west works. In the east, you might not even ever get a fire truck. You might just get 2 people on an ambulance in New Jersey or in Pennsylvania, which is okay until you run into a full-blown heart attack or stroke, and then you're going to need those additional people. And you hear that a lot. Why do you have so many people here? Well, if we don't need them, that's great. We'll turn around and go home. We'll go back in service. If we do need them, you want them there. Okay, and you want them to be there. And then the second question was,
so since you moved to automatic aid in Cave
Yes.
Creek on the medical side, have you experienced a difference? I mean, have you had multiple calls at the same time? I understand that the big accident happens and you need multiple units.
Sure.
I get that part. That's probably not so often, but how about multiple incidents at the same time? Or, I mean, that's what might be a concern.
yeah, it hasn't been an issue for us at all. I get dispatched and paged every time that there's a call in Cave Creek, so I can monitor that and see if there's conflicting calls. That does not happen as often as you think. But the difference is we're not waiting to find another unit to go to it. There's an immediate dispatch. You know, if we happen to be on a heart attack at Harold's, there are different types of calls at Harold's, but yeah. And then something happens on Carefree Highway, you're going to get almost the exact same response time because you're going to get the truck from Phoenix or the truck from Scottsdale or the other truck from Daisy Mountain. So it hasn't shown itself to be an issue. In fact, it's the other way around. The people that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of folks in Cave Creek, and as you know, I go to the chamber meetings and all that types of stuff. They are thrilled with the service levels they're getting. I have not had any issues with anybody calling saying, why did we do this? There's no change, because everybody has recognized the change and knows somebody that has benefited from that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, counsel, question?
I have a question. When you were looking for automatic aid and someone to provide that, you obviously went with Daisy Mountain, but were there others that were willing to present a contract and negotiate with you, or how did that work?
Initially, I spoke with, there's really 3.
Right.
You had Scottsdale and Phoenix and Daisy Mountain. And so initially I spoke with Chief Shannon and he said he would think about it and entertain it. I talked with Chief Kira Cockrenner from Phoenix, and she initially said, well, let's talk about this, and then she came back and said, I would rather you worked on some other issues in Cave Creek, and so we're not interested in providing that for you. And then I went to Daisy Mountain and said, what does this do if we expand you to the east and pick us up? And actually that was an easy choice. Scottsdale would have gone around you guys and had it, they could have done it, but they opted, and the three chiefs ended up talking, I'm sure, and they decided that that was the best option for us. And so then we entered into agreements or contract negotiations with Daisy Mountain. And so the vice mayor at the time and myself and our attorney dealt with Daisy Mountain with their chairman of their board, their fire chief, and their attorney to come up with what I, again, you believe me or not, but I think is a really, really good intergovernmental agreement. The IGA that we hammered out is, in my opinion, much better than the one in Phoenix, because I use that as a template. But it's a very, very good and very comprehensive intergovernmental agreement, which gives the town of Cave Creek some ability to control what we can control, and the town of, and the Daisy Mountain Fire District to understand what we're expecting for service levels. So that's, I don't know if you've looked at that yet or not, but that's a very good intergovernmental agreement.
Can I just clarify, thank you for your comments and presentation, but can I clarify, did you say that if there is a house fire, that a ladder truck automatically is dispatched?
Yes, the preliminary dispatch for a residential house is 3 engines and a ladder truck and a battalion chief or a command officer, because command's critical to make sure that we have control of our firefighters and we don't lose track of somebody. But there's different operations is how it's trained. Engine companies do one thing, they lay lines, they can pump water, they enter the house. Ladder companies do a second series of operations. They vent the house, they make sure that the doors are open, there's nothing locked, that type of stuff. Engine companies can do that stuff if there's no ladder company, but it's set up to be 3 engines and a ladder to every structure call. First alarm, or not even a first alarm, but an initial dispatch to a residential house. There's 3 engines and a ladder, and that gives you 4, 4, 4, and then two on the battalion chief ride.
Thank you. And to one of John's questions you were answering, so when you've had a situation where there are multiple medical calls, with automatic aid, it's been a seamless response?
That's correct.
Even if the Cave Creek truck is out,
That's correct.
the response has been seamless and timely?
That's correct. And so I've been telling everybody in Cave Creek, as I've gone out to the different, community meetings and stuff, don't be surprised if you have a white truck from Scottsdale show up. Does it matter? Do you care what color the truck is that shows up? Most people don't. If it's a white one or it's a red one from Daisy Mountain or red one from Phoenix, you don't care. You want the most appropriate, closest folks to get there. And so everybody is understanding that, and everybody's saying, "Oh, this is great. Yeah, the Phoenix trucks go to, Whole Foods for us once in a while. Or they're there. They're driving around the community, learning about the community. It's part of their response. And so, no, that has not been an issue at all.
Okay, Councilman Guyer?
Yeah, my question has to do with the contract. As I understand it, it's a 25-year contract.
Yes.
You guys have entered into, and there's 5 years that are kind of cost controlled with a maximum increase. How do we deal with the out years? 20 years with not any predictability on cost increases.
The reason it's a 20 to 25-year contract is because you're not hiring firefighters for a season or a year. These are careers. And the 12 firefighters that we hired to cover Cave Creek are all new firefighters, and they're going to be with us for 20 to 25 years. So those types of high-quality people don't want to come if you're going to say, well, we're going to do this from year to year, and we'll decide if we're going to continue to do this or not. The agreement is very clear on our intergovernmental agreement on how the fees are established. And what the 5 years is at least at 5 years, we're going to sit down and look at it again and make sure that everything's working or not working. We might change stuff, we might not change stuff. It doesn't matter, but we put that in there every 5 years. We're going to look at this or if there's a significant change to the service levels, whether we want it or Daisy Mountain wants it. We have that agreement that we would talk about that and what those changes are. But if you don't have a long-term contract, there's a real good chance, you know, Daisy Mountain can't absorb a fire station for 2 years and then say, oh, sorry, you 15 guys now have to go away. That's not what's gonna happen. So, we did it on a long-term contract, and there is outs in the contract. Just like every contract, there's outs. If something happens or we wanna change it, you can do it. But it's gonna end up costing, in my estimation, it's gonna end up costing an awful lot more to the town to do that. We'll get back into paying for your overhead or paying for additional things like that. But it made it easier to negotiate, saying we're willing to enter into a 20 or 25-year contract because this is a career. This is not it's not a seasonal, we're not hiring seasonal guys for the wildland fire stuff. We're just not doing that.
I have one more, sorry.
Go ahead.
So, I was on the Public Safety Advisory Commission, and we did the deep dive on the automatic aid and mutual aid, and you know, when the contract was canceled from Scottsdale notifying us that they were canceling it, and then Cave Creek not wanting to enter into a contract with us as well, I thought in general that we were under a higher level of risk. It's hard to quantify exactly what that is, but as you said, the day-to-day versus that time when you need help makes a difference. And so what I'm hearing from you is that it is a higher level of risk if you don't have someone legally obligated to come to your aid when you need that support.
I believe that it is, and I'll clarify one comment that you made. The discussion is, will Cave Creek help us or not help us? You have to understand from our position was we're in the first year of a brand new intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Fire Service. And if the Regional Fire Service sets this standard and has canceled their mutual aid agreements with Royal Metro, we weren't in a position to put our agreement, which is a contract with the region, at risk. For that, if you were to become a part of the automatic aid, you would absolutely be a part of that, and it wouldn't be, it's not an issue. But we talked it over, and again, this is my position, you know, but we couldn't put our new agreement at risk because Carefree or Royal Metro didn't change. And so that's why you kind of got the response that you got. It doesn't mean that can't happen in the future. It doesn't mean it won't happen. It would happen in the future if you were part of automatic aid. But as far as for us to rewrite the region's mutual aid agreement with Royal Metro, we're not in a position to do that as the new kids on the block. Just to be perfectly honest with you.
Thank you for your presentation, Jim. Erica, how am I doing? Okay. Just curious, of the 630 total incidents you had in the year last year, 2022, 467 were for emergency medical services. Why doesn't the, roughly, let's say it's 60-70%, why don't fire stations have substations in which there are strictly an EMS service vehicle scattered about the community, since those are 3-4 to 1 calls? Why is it?
The thought behind it is we already have the fire stations set on approximately 3 to 5 to 10 minute response. If you want to talk to Scottsdale or Phoenix, we have those stations already set. So the units that are in those stations can respond and provide that. And what we don't do is we don't, let me back up just a second here. As I mentioned before, the fire service is your emergency medical service, and we can't guarantee that they're going to this type of call every time. So if they get dispatched to a difficulty breathing, that difficulty breathing might be a full-blown heart attack, and so if you only send 2 people, then they're going to end up calling for additional resources anyway. So what we send is the 4-person engine company that can handle that, or turn it over to a lower lower level and go back in service. Everybody's on radio, so everybody's in service the whole time. So even if you see a truck driving around, you say, well, they're not in the station, they're not available to respond. Well, they are available to respond because they're dispatched immediately. So it's the same with house fires. A story in the valley here, there was a, if I can go down a rabbit trail for a second here, I apologize, but there was a call to the Phoenix dispatch that said, I'm having a hard time breathing. And they said, okay, you're having a hard time breathing? Can you stand up? Yes, I can stand up. Can you sit down? Yes. Okay, we're sending a unit. And they sent one engine, and they sent it. They said, do you know why? Or have you had asthma, or do you have a hard time? Why are you having a hard time breathing? And the lady on the other end of the phone goes, no, because there's too much smoke in the house and I can't breathe. So, so sometimes you don't know exactly what you're going to. So we're going to send appropriate response and have those first units be able to adjust and move on. So that goes into the second part of what I will say is, an engine company, you have to think of it a little bit different. An engine company is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. An engine company doesn't know what call they're going to when they're initially dispatched. You might say a car accident and they might have hit a cactus, or you might have had a car accident that hit a pole and is on fire. And so the difference in what has to happen. But then the second part of that is they don't know what their next call is going to be. So they don't have time to, okay, well, we addressed this, now we're going to go back to the station and change to this truck, and then change to this truck, and then go to that call. They have to be ready to go from incident to incident to incident. So that's why they take everything that they have with them. That's why those trucks are so well stacked and so well staffed.
Thank you.
Questions? So I'd like to go back to the ladder truck for a second.
Sure.
So you explained what the ladder truck personnel would do, but a ladder truck is dispatched to every house fire, even if the house fire is like a 20-foot tall house.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And part of that is because of the difference in what their primary responsibilities are. Again, the ladder truck is going to worry about ventilation. The ladder trucks can also help with making entry or opening they call softening the building, opening it up so that the firefighters can get in and out safely, so they don't get trapped in. There's very few 2,000 square foot houses that are being built in the north part of the valley nowadays. It's a lot different. And so those trucks do that. The other thing that those trucks do is if they don't need to put a hole in the roof to ventilate or something like that, then they're for salvage. They go in and they start saving the equipment and the stuff that's in the house that the people own. We've had our ladder companies come in and put take bowls and put an antique table into the bowls and then cover it, and the table survived the fire, even though the fire was in the back bedrooms. There's a whole list of things that they do. They secure the utilities. They make sure that the gas is off and not leaking, and make sure the power's off so we don't electrocute anything. There's a whole list of things that are primary responsibilities. Now, again, if a ladder truck gets delayed, then an engine company can do that kind of stuff, but that's not their primary job. And so that's why you get the 3-in-1 every time, and they have the ability to do that.
Okay, so if there's a house fire in Cave Creek, then the closest ladder truck is on Lone Mountain and Scottsdale Road or Pima Road. Is that correct? Or where does it come from?
Well, it can come from there or it can come from Daisy Mountain. Daisy Mountain also has a ladder truck.
Where's that?
It's on, I'd have to look at the
Okay.
address of the station, but they have one that can come either way.
So if a house fire is in Carefree, what happens? We have a house fire in Carefree.
Okay.
Where's our ladder truck going to come from?
Most of the time, yours is probably going to come from Pima Road and Lone Mountain.
And that would be a mutual aid request? We'd have.
It'd be an automatic aid request if you're part of the automatic aid system. If you were to request that as a mutual aid, then they would see if it was available and make that decision based on the fire department making that decision.
How is that question asked? I mean, do they make it on phone calls? They're on radios? How does this go down?
It usually goes dispatch center to dispatch center, or the initial responding engine company says, this is a working fire, can I upgrade this assignment? And if you upgrade the assignment, you get more resources, obviously. And so it can come from the initial dispatch, it can come from dispatch to dispatch, it can come from an initial responder seeing what they got, or getting on the scene and saying, I don't have enough resources, can I get this? And then the contact is made between the two dispatch centers. And then the regional dispatch center will contact Scottsdale Fire and say, hey, we have a request for mutual aid for these units.
So it's a series of conversations,
Yes, it's not automatic,
not automatic.
not automatic. And approval will have to be given
Okay.
at this point in time with the way that the current system is.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other questions from council? Yeah, Councilman House.
Jim, pardon me, follow up with John. So if there's a fire, pardon me, and let's say, and there's a ladder truck that's coming from Scottsdale, and then a couple minutes afterwards, there's another call and with the same situation somewhere else in town. But since that call is initiated, that Scottsdale ladder truck, fire truck, EMS services, they are committed to that first response.
Correct,
Would that be correct?
correct.
All right, now regardless if that, you know, they're coming from a different town. So now if there's a fire in Scottsdale, there'll be another service nearby that then, when they receive that call, they are then committed to focus on that property only.
That's correct. Your dispatch, you don't get to change your dispatches unless the first unit on the scene gets there and says, hey, this is a outlet, return everybody, and, you know, and everybody else hasn't got there yet. Or, yeah, we see this is a cooking fire outside, this is, you know, somebody doing a warming fire, turn everybody around, then everybody is available to go to the next call. Okay, and again, they're all on radios, they're all in immediate contact, and they're all known exactly where they are by the dispatch center. So in response to yours, so yeah, if the first units, and they needed those units for that fire, they're committed to that fire. And then if a second one comes out, then the next three closest units, so the next closest ladder would come, whether it's Daisy Mountain or whether that's Thompson Peak and Pima is the next closest ladder for Scottsdale. So that, it doesn't matter where they're at, by the locators, these next three units are going, or 4 units.
Thank you, Jim. I'm good.
So I don't think there's any additional questions from council, so Mr. Nelson had a call to the public question. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Just say your name and location.
George Nelson, the resident, like most of you, I came to Camp 3, getting away from New York, Chicago, cities, you know, we got accidents with all kind of promises. For 72 of my 74 years, I've been the butt of jokes because of my big nose. But big nose knows, and it's able to sniff things out that stick. It doesn't surprise me that we're putting on this presentation because our town runs on $1.9 million budget, 17 employees, while they're talking about this is a money issue, not a fire issue. We'll get into that. 17 employees into $1.9 million is an average salary of $111,000. The average administrator in Arizona gets $78,000. I assume, doing a little math and looking into it, it's hard to get an exact number. We're about in the $200,000 range. So it doesn't surprise me that they could spend all kind of money on consultants and invite these people while we have people here. And this is personal to me because I was in the towers September 19th on 9/11. So I salute you guys for anyone to make accusations and fear that firemen would not automatically attend and come to a fire because the politics that's going on here is embarrassing and it's insulting. Especially coming from you, that you used to be in Rural Metro, and I don't know how you left Rural Metro. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is not about fire. Because these people have served with all the googly blah, 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 for over 50 years. And I'd like someone to raise their hand where they knew someone that didn't make it, and that they think that auto aid is going to be any better. And they give these isolated instances over 50 years because of 2 fires and pick things out from paid consultants. And my last question is, why weren't these people invited to give equal time in this meeting? That I had to sit here for over an hour and listen to this nonsense. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want me to respond or not, but as you mentioned, been in the fire service for 47 years. I was in Rural Metro for 30 years. I did exactly what these guys are doing. I know what they're doing. I mentioned early on, I'm not going to throw stones at anybody, and I did not throw stones at anybody, especially the firefighters, because I know how hard they work with the resources that they have. And so I apologize for that if you took that the wrong way, but I'm not going to be impugned by somebody that says I don't know what I'm talking about, because I've been doing this for an awful long time. And I came here as an invite from the town of Carefree to tell about the experiences that we've had in Cave Creek. We did make the change. The people at Cave Creek were thrilled with the change, and the service has improved down there. I'm not saying nothing that these guys don't provide that service, but I'm telling you that this community is not the same as it was in early 80s and early 70s.
Please, we have to have order. We have to have order, Mr. Mayor.
So I apologize for that, and I apologize if I got offline or out of order, but I'm not gonna listen to somebody tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm taking shots against these firefighters, because I never did that.
And for the record, Rural Metro has spoken at our meetings several times over the last year and a half, 2 years, since we embarked upon this discussion. And this is the first time we have ever had anyone from Scottsdale, Daisy Mountain, Phoenix, and outside agencies speak at a council meeting,
That's correct.
so, for the record. So do you have time to entertain any other questions if I was to open it up to the audience?
I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have, because
Okay.
everything I have is in front of you.
So the way we're going to run this is if the audience has any questions, you have to fill out a slip, and you're limited to no more than 3 minutes, and you're welcome to come up and have a question for Mr. Ford. All right, Chief, I'll give you a shot.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank Chief Ford and the folks from Cave Creek. I appreciate, your experience and the wisdom, and I don't disagree with anything that the chief has to say with regards to how mutual aid works, because that is, or automatic aid, that is exactly how it works, and it truly is a decision for the Cave Creek folks at that time and for you all and the citizens to make that decision on the level of risk, or the assumption of that level of risk, and what you're willing to pay for it. Just a couple things. Everybody loves ladder trucks. As the chief probably understood, is well aware, and he made mention that engine companies can do ladder work as well. The other thing about ladder trucks is when the ladder goes up, the building comes down, okay? Most of the time, what trucks are being used for is unfortunately a defensive operation, and it doesn't bode well for the structure. The incident that I was referring to was that incident, and I agree, the automatic aid system worked exactly as it did. When I talked about a delayed response, it was that the Daisy Mountain engine being committed elsewhere, the response was, I think, 10 to 12 minutes for the 3 engines all told to arrive, rather than having that Daisy Mountain engine there immediately. Now, understand, any fire department in the country can be in that situation, regardless of whether you're auto aid or not. We could certainly be committed on another call and then have a call jump off, and we're not, in the station. We had those 2 cardiac saves where we returned to spontaneous circulation for folks in the park. We happened to be at the station, and a minute and a half later, we're thumping on chests and bringing folks back. You know something? That's great. It's also luck, because if there was another call, we wouldn't have been there, and then we wouldn't have had that type of response. So to the chief's point, that is exactly how auto aid works. When I talk about a delayed response, however, that is what I'm referring to. That engine was committed. I was under the assumption from the dispatch notes they were actually committed on an automatic aid assignment, not in-house, but I could be mistaken on that. But that was the referral. EMS, the CO certificate of necessity. Rural Metro has both the fire contract and the CON for Cave Creek. So there is a difference in that response. I've worked for 33 years for fire-based EMS transport systems. I too came from back east in Cleveland, where primarily all fire departments ran fire-based transport EMS systems. So that is what I'm familiar with. We also, the call comes into Maricopa Sheriff, MCSO, and gets transferred, instead of Phoenix, it gets transferred to Rural Metro. So there is no difference in the dispatch systems. They both operate off the same standards. Speaking of standards, NFPA 1710, the majority of the country is unable to meet 1710 response and standards. That's not a slam on anybody. Everybody has to operate within their means. I'm not from around here. I've been accused of that, and own it with all my passion. this is a tremendous community. It has an abundance of resources. That doesn't mean it's the only way to do things, though, okay? Automatic aid is a tremendous system. Daisy Mountain is a tremendous, and Scottsdale and Phoenix, they're all excellent, excellent departments. That's not the question. Mutual aid, technically, we weren't providing mutual aid either. We were paying for service, right? Mutual aid is mutual, where folks call each other and they don't pay. We were paying for service. We're not a mutual aid department because, as was pointed out, it's not like for like. Now, with regards to the politics, here's my only beef, okay? My only beef is this. There are different ways to, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, skin a cat. I'm sorry to all the cat lovers, all right? We could show up in Cave Creek on the bar district in a minute and a half with 8 personnel, 2 engines, and a rescue with 3 paramedics. I defy logic to say that that's not a benefit to Cave Creek and their community instead of waiting for other apparatus to come from around the auto aid system, who will be there, absolutely they'll be there, but it may take some time. All those closest doesn't mean fastest. It just means the next closest available. Doesn't necessarily mean the fastest, right? So I don't have any issues at all with automatic aid or these departments. They're excellent, excellent departments. It's an excellent system. The problem is that the politics are getting in the way of what's best for the citizens. And that's my biggest heartache. So anyway, thank you. And Chief, Mr. Mayor, Madam City Manager, whatever we call you. Thank you very much for coming. So nice that she's been coming. Yeah.
Okay,
Can I just
Go
add
ahead.
something?
sure.
Or were you gonna answer that? I just wanted to say that, on May 16th, we're gonna have an election, a special election, to talk about this. And in my opinion, what it comes down to is for us all to be educated on what automatic aid will do for us and what mutual aid will do for us. And then it's up to the citizens of Carefree to decide what they're willing to live with and what they're not. And it could come down to what they're willing to live with. So I just urge you all, right now there are a number of us in the post office during the week who are answering questions. We have pamphlets that talk about all the differences. And so I would just ask you to all get as educated as you can on the issues, and then decide for yourself what's going to be the best for us. This automatic aid is, in my mind, an additional level of insurance. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ford?
And Mr. Mayor and Council, all I'd like to say is that, as I talked about with Cave Creek, when I went to Cave Creek, you're all the policymakers and the community gets and has the level of service the community wants. And Cave Creek decided that it would be better for them to improve their system and their service and get into the automatic aid system and get more additional support. That's the decision that was made there, and they did it. Would automatic aid benefit the town of Carefree? In my opinion, absolutely. You're between Scottsdale, you're between Cave Creek. Phoenix is very close. You would have resources, a lot more resources, a lot closer. Would Carefree's unit go into Cave Creek once in a while? Absolutely. Would Cave Creek's unit come into Carefree, especially on the west side? Absolutely. But that's the system. That's the beauty of the system. And so, again, it's the level that you decide. I'm not a politician. I'm not a decision maker. I'm an old fire chief, as you could tell tonight. So it's your decision and it's the community's decision. But it's just like the contracts with Roar Metro. It's insurance. It's what level of insurance you want.
Okay, thank you, sir. So another call to the public. Mark? Yeah, so please fill us in. So what was your last name?
Cy Hockey. You wouldn't have been able to pronounce it if I put it on there. Mayor, members of the council, I'm just here. I came by to see, I've been working out of this station since 1985. So not quite as long as Jim, but 38 years. I grew up in the Cave Creek Carefree border from about late 70s on. So I've been here from day one. And we talk about progression and automatic aid, and I'm not against automatic aid or growing. When I started in Cave Creek, the Cave Creek Firehouse in Sleepy Hollow, there was one guy in the truck, and it handled Cave Creek and Carefree. And a lot of times that one guy was me. And I did a damn good job while I was doing it with one guy. We talk about ladder trucks, and they do venting, and they do extrication. Well, we do that on the engine, so you're not missing that. They have an elevated stream, and we can spray water out of the top of our truck too. So I'd love to have a ladder truck here, and if people want to pay for that, I'm sure they'll put one here. The couple things I noticed in the conversation, I wish I had a piece of paper and was writing stuff down. We talked about the majority of our calls are EMS calls, medical calls. I've been here for a long time. Last big fire we had was that wedding cake. That was a long time ago. Like Chief said, in the last 2 weeks, we've had 2 cardiac arrests that we brought back. That's pretty amazing. Not to pick on anybody, Daisy Mountain had a cardiac arrest 2 days ago. The ambulance they called to transport was our ambulance. Well, they didn't do so well, because on 11th Ave, our ambulance coming that far, that's too far. Your chance of survival dropped 10% per minute. We have 2 fire trucks at our station. If you get a fire, 15 people are initially dispatched. Not 16, but we got 15 coming. If our ambulance goes on a call, immediately another ambulance is heading this way. Rural Metro, the parent company Rural Metro is the largest, one of the, if not the largest, one of the largest ambulance providers in the country. We do the FEMA contracts when there's hurricanes and stuff. We got a lot of ambulances, and that's what we need. I'm not the oldest, but we're a lot of old people here. So we're dying of heart attacks and strokes, and that's what we need. Our ambulance out of the Cave Creek Carefree Station has gone into Daisy Mountain since they went on their own 105 times. So if you think they're handling all their own business because they're automatic aid, we've helped them out 105 times. You know how many times we've called them? Maybe 1. I'm not even sure. 1 or 2. We've gone in 105 to help them. So these guys they're great guys, you know. You go on your own, you go with Daisy, you're gonna lose guys that have been here a long time, that know the back roads, know how to get in the airport, know how to get to all these little streets, know the back gates of the boulders. And I know you got maps and you can pull up stuff, not as quick as the guys that know it. Anyway.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay.
Another question, if I may. Jim,
I'm just,
respond, go ahead.
I'm sorry, all I was gonna say is, I can't validate that 105 times, I'm not familiar with that. I'll ask that question, but I didn't know that ambulance, but again, like I mentioned earlier, your EMS is provided by your engine, your ambulance is a transport unit, and that's a secondary service. And so if the first units, and there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's not as many ambulances as there are fire trucks. And so if it's needed to be transported, and we did just fly out a code arrest that came back the other day from the hospital down there. So, but I'll have to double check on that 105 number. But again, as I said early on, I'm not questioning the commitment or the desire or the skills of the guys that are here. I'm just saying it's a different system. It's a different option. So.
Okay.
Question I
Councilman
have.
Hatcher.
Gary, how much do we spend on our fire contract for Rural Metro on an annual basis currently?
The contract increased this past year with the renegotiated contract. It's a 5-year term with 2 increments. The first increment is 18 months. The second increment is 42 months. The contract for this first initial term is 1.867 for each fiscal year. And then after the first 18-month term, it will increase by approximately 2.5% per year.
So Jim, if we had a fire here, structural fire, and all the, the men in our fire department currently with rural metro is there, and they need additional backup, would you be there?
The current process, and again, I'm not the policymaker for the fire departments either, current process is if it's a life safety issue, they will come and address the life safety issue. If it's to just raise the ladder and dump water on a fire until it goes out, then that unit won't be coming from the region. So they will come in an event of a life safety issue. That's the current policy. I can't tell you if you call Scottsdale and they say, yes, I'm coming, or no, I'm not coming, or if you call Phoenix if they're coming or not. But that's the current policy. That's in the documents that you have.
The issue, the concern I have is we're spending 1.8 million and roughly, and we're getting 98% of our needs fulfilled. And what's being asked is we have to write another check for another $1 million a year to cover 2%. Is that what you're asking us, suggesting that we do?
No, I'm suggesting that you take a closer look at that and you compare apples to apples. You compare what a 4-person 2-medic truck would cost you with Rural Metro to a 4-person 2-medic truck, what would cost you for Daisy Mountain. I don't think I don't know if that's been done or not. I'm not familiar with that. But I think that you compare apples to apples. If you're saying it's 1.5 for a 3-person 1-medic truck, but you're not getting a 4-person 2-medic truck, then that's a difference. Those aren't, as I talked about mutual aid, those aren't the same. So I think that you need to look at that kind of stuff first. And I would like to make one other quick comment is when we went on our own, the Cave Creek and Daisy Mountain, our agreement was with Daisy Mountain would hire rural metro firefighters. And all the Valley fire departments have hired rural metro fire department firefighters over the years. We did it in Scottsdale, they did it in Glendale, everywhere else. We purposely said, we're going to open this up first to rural metro firefighters to apply for these positions so we can get people that knew the area or those folks. We were displacing 15 and we opened it up for 15 firefighters. The same exact thing happened when Scottsdale transitioned in 2005. You have the letter there from Jan Dolan that said, okay, we just got notice that rural metro is leaving in 18 months. We're going to try and do everything we can to hire as many of the people that have served this community as we can, and they did. They didn't hire everybody couldn't do it, but they probably hired 70 to 80% or more of those folks. And so it's not like we're just cutting them off, and we didn't cut them off in Cave Creek, and those are the folks that came in and were able to be reevaluated and trained a little bit differently and fit into the system. So it's not like we're trying to cut everybody off. Again, I understand the emotions of it. I've been through it. This will be the 3rd time that I've been through it. I understand the emotions. It's not and not an easy thing, but it comes back down to what you feel and what the community feels is best for their level of service and how much they want. So
Would you describe mutual aid as, 1 truck, 4 men versus 1 truck and 3 men? But why is the policy different with rural metro versus those towns that's ascribed to automatic aid in terms of the manpower, the personnel per trip? Why is that 3 versus 4? Why doesn't rural metro adjust it so it's identical to the existing system over at automatic aid?
no, that's one of the $64 million questions, and I've been around a long time. That's one of the issues that has haunted rural metro over the years here in Maricopa County.
So that's a policy decision they
It's
made.
a policy decision by rural metro. Scottsdale, with rural metro, we only had 1 4-person engine, everything else was 3 or 2. And when we came into the automatic aid system, that was probably the biggest change we had to make. And that was, again, as I mentioned earlier with the letter from Jan Dolan, the city was willing to pay to go to 3 shifts. The city was willing to pay for 4-person engine companies. And the policy decision by the organization came back and said, sorry, we're not going to do that. We're going to end the contract when it ends in 2005.
If they changed their policy, would you say that the balance of that mutual aid services were more equitable and can complete greater level of services to us?
The balance would be more equitable if they changed, but also I can't guarantee that they would still be allowed into automatic aid. There's a lot of history that goes way beyond my skills and my ability to talk about. So I'm not going to, but the service would be different, but it still would have to, is it still going to be mutual aid versus automatic aid? because I don't know that they can get into the system. They've asked recently, or last year, they asked if they could get into the system, and the system said no because of all the stuff in the past, and Gary can probably talk to that a little bit more.
Thank you.
Can I
Another,
just
go
say
ahead.
one thing? So I believe the clarification on the 105 calls was that at the very beginning of 2022, Rural Metro held the certificate of necessity in Cave Creek, so they were legally obligated to attend to those needs. At some point mid-year, if my memory serves me correctly, the certificate of necessity was transferred to Daisy Mountain, and Rural Metro had a secondary certificate of necessity. So that's why I believe the bulk of calls happened in the first 5 months of the year or so, is because Rural Metro was legally obligated under the certificate of necessity to provide that service.
Yeah, I didn't bring that with me, but I can get that to your town manager and give you that date of when that occurred, because that was a ruling by the Department of Health Services that, and you're correct, it didn't happen January 3rd. It happened well into the year. But I can get that exact date and information to you of when that occurred.
Okay. Ms. Jan Neal has a question. Welcome to stand and state your name.
Yes, Jan Neal, 1820 East Eagle Claw. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to listen to what this gentleman has to say. And maybe it's all my years in IT. I'm a linear thinker. I like to see comparisons. I find myself listening to him, but I feel that it is a great disservice to these gentlemen back here, because I really think the format and the venue of this should be a compare and contrast. So we hear what our option is with automatic aid, but at the same time, I don't have a good understanding of what we're getting now. Now that might be part of my fault, and I have heard them speak at other town council meetings. However, I don't recall ever giving them this amount of time. Maybe I'm wrong. So I would just ask that you please respectfully consider having a venue where we hear the automatic aid, but balance it with what we're getting now. I think that would help the community understand and make decisions on what we think is best for our community. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Nelson, please.
Yes, thank you for another opportunity.
So just 3 minutes, please.
Mr. Letts, I won't be as long as gentlemen. Just out of curiosity, they just brought out, I learned the first time the difference between 3 and 4 people on a truck with going down facilities. Can you tell me out of the hundreds of thousands of incidences where there's been a case, what percentage, because there were only 3 people on the truck instead of 4 people on the truck, where it made a difference? Second question, just to point everyone, I had a stint put in 2 years ago. I asked Honor Health, why don't you build a I don't want to drive a half hour down to the hospital. Why don't you build a hospital up here? So he's a lot closer. The answer is it made no economic sense. In reality, it's more diminishing return. So the service that we've been getting has been fantastic. It's a superb record. And I don't understand, again, as this lady pointed out, perhaps we need the date to go on, because to say that gentlemen have been here to speak, it certainly has not been in the format. And as I said, not with the paid consultants, not with all the ammunition that the town has been able to send out. Again, it's a limited opportunity. And I would like to thank the mayor, because I asked him for some help and information. And finally, someone here, not from the administrator's office, but from the council, the mayor, I salute you. Thank you for giving me that information, sir.
All right, are there any additional questions before we move on? All right. We'll have a comment to anything, sir, or are we done?
I'll just make one quick comment, and I don't.
It's okay, he has the floor.
First off, I'll back up a little bit. I'm not a paid consultant. I'm a fire professional working for the town of Cave Creek. Before that, I was fully employed with the city of Scottsdale. Before that with Rome Metro. I'm not a consultant. I've never been a consultant. So I'm just a fire person that has done this type of work. The second thing, you asked a question about what's the difference between 3 and a 4, and it's really simple math that the studies have been done at the universities that a 4-person company is more than 25% more effective in completing the tasks needed of an engine company, whether that's an EMS heart attack or whether that's a fire. It's much more effective, much more efficient to have the 4 persons. The second reason that they went to 4-person staffing nationally is because on house fires, there's a guideline, because we wear the air packs and we wear all of that stuff. It's called 2 in and 2 out. If you put 2 people in the house to search it, to go through the smoke and all the stuff that you're familiar with the fires, there's supposed to be 2 people outside. There can't be 2 people outside if it's a 3-person engine company. You have to wait till the next unit or those other additional units come. A single engine company can do 2 in and 2 out and legally go in. Does that say that the 3-person engine companies don't go in? I'm not saying that. I think they do it, but they're not supposed to, but they do it anyway. But there's the 2 in and 2 out is an OSHA regulation for hazardous locations, and that's what we work on for house fires. And I would, and I'll make the comment, I probably shouldn't, but you had the Public Safety Committee, and the Public Safety Committee gave everybody an opportunity to come and talk to your committee and make the presentations and talk about all this before that committee made its recommendations. So it's not like this is the first time that you've heard about this, and like I said, I haven't presented to this council before, other than I did make a short presentation to the Public Safety Committee. I was one of the nights, but I believe there was 5 or 6 nights that you invited different folks, including Rome Metro, to do that. So it's not like, to support you guys, it's not like you have not done that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you very much for spending a good chunk of your evening with us. And the key is education. No matter what you think about, the outcome should be, as the Vice Mayor said, just be informed. You can challenge the facts, it's healthy. If you have questions, you can bring them to us. You can bring them to the gentleman in the back of the room. You can bring them to the Daisy Mountain personnel in Cave Creek. But we all need to get educated so we can make informed decisions that suit us and match where we stand in our lives. So before we wrap up this agenda item, if the Mayor of Cave Creek is here, if you would like to say something, you're welcome to come on up for a couple minutes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Very brief, not a couple, very briefly. The first thing is, what's a fire truck white for? They're supposed to be red.
Good question.
Well, 2 years ago, we were where you are today, and you're in the toughest part. I broke it down into 3 things. 1, decision making. 2 is the finance, and 3 is implementation. It was easier for us because we had 2 big fires, and we have a very large area to service. So we had a lot of impetus behind our decision-making that made it much easier, I think, than you have. And we made a great decision, in my view, and that's getting Jim Ford on loan from Scottsdale first. And so the implementation was smooth between having Jim as a trusted advisor, and he is exceptionally experienced, and made it very easy for us to make our decisions. And then we had Daisy Mountain, and Daisy Mountain has proven to be just a wonderful partner. When we don't have a fire truck, they just bring one in. When it's down for maintenance, they just bring one in. So it's a long contract. The financing issues were difficult, just like you're seeing here today. I do not envy going through with this, especially since you've not had the fire yet that kind of galvanized public opinion. We had tons of ideas. Well, let's just do a volunteer fire department. Hey, if we have a fire, they're going to come anyway. I mean, there were all kinds of ideas, and we had to make the decision based on what was best for the community. Now, we didn't have to put a property tax in, but we had to raise utility rates dramatically because a lot of the general fund money was going to subsidize water things and deal with historical issues with equipment, and so we borrowed and raised fees to cover that borrowing to fix up a lot of our water stuff. So there has been a financial impact. It's just a different impact. You're going to have to pay. I mean, if you decide to go with it. And fundamentally, we're two small, tiny towns on the north end of a behemoth over here. And the expectations of our community were that we would have something that was compatible with what they see around us. So we made this, and I think it was the right thing for Cave Creek. I wish you all the luck in the world. I'm sure you'll find the right thing to do for Carefree. And I just pledge our cooperation. I think, I mean, there's no doubt that I think that having this schism between automatic aid and rural metro, having that go away would be good for both towns. You've got residents right across the street almost from our fire department over there. So at some point, I hope that situation is completely gone and we can have a seamless approach to benefiting both communities. Whatever you decide to do, we're pulling for you. So good luck with it and let us know if we can help.
Mayor Morris? I'm just curious, does Cave Creek have a property tax?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but Mayor Crane and I have been talking on the phone about some of the bills in the legislature.
Yes.
And my message to our representatives and senator is, if you, because we depend on food sales tax, if that bill goes through, they're not cutting taxes, they're shifting them, because I think we're going to have a property tax to pay for our fire department.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So looking forward, I expect you and I and the two towns will have many other issues beside this, common issues. We can work together and find solutions and do our homework. You bet. Thank you.
Mayor, I have
Okay,
just
go ahead.
one comment for the whole council. And Mayor, you brought this up, and for everybody to recognize that your community is 38 square miles, Cave Creek. And as I recall, Gary, we're 8.5 square miles. We're a fourth of the size. So, you know, it's something to consider here with what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a couple of
Go ahead.
comments if I could. First of all, I don't think it would be a bad idea to let Rural Metro do a presentation like Chief Ford did. There was 20 public meetings with the public safety group. There was 5 open houses. Yet I think now the issue is on people's radar. So I think that would be very beneficial. Another point, I think especially to Mr. Nelson, there's been a material change in our fire service, and that is we lost the Cave Creek Station on the west side that used to come. We lost mutual aid with Scottsdale. Those are material changes that we had an obligation to present that to the community. We also have an obligation to present solutions, and that's what we've tried to do. Yes, we've hired consultants. We had a citizens group with some sharp people. We also needed help from Chief Kratz to figure out what exactly is all involved in the equipment. We needed Mr. Rounds to really help us understand what's our ability to pay. We don't have the same financial firepower as Cave Creek. They've got Carefree Highway, Cave Creek Road. You see the development. That's a lot of sales tax revenue. I don't think our people want that kind of development in Carefree, and we don't have the land to do it if they wanted it anyway. So there's we can't bankrupt the town. We have to be responsible. So we're trying to lay this thing out. You could argue that there's maybe been some biased arguments, pro, for, whatever, but it'll shake out in the next 3 months. So I think it's really important that we all just kind of take the heat down, like Chief Soul said. Let's get to the facts. Everybody's going to have a different assessment of their risk, and that's okay. But let's just have that honest debate, and let's not demonize people and criticize. Just let's keep it on the facts.
Well said. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to, please, Mr.
Please.
Nelson. Okay, so this wraps up the discussion on, from the town of Cave Creek. Thank you very much for coming here tonight,
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
all of you. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jim. Okay. next up is, we're gonna change the agenda slightly. We're gonna bring item number 10 up for discussion. It's very fast. This is a review, discussion, and possible action for a street closure on Easy Street in Ho-Hum on Sunday, March 5th, from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the all Porsche Grand Display at Carefree Town Center Car Show.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm going to make this extremely brief here, if you can bring up the map.
Can I stop you for 1 second? I see that Rural Metro's leaving. I just want to thank you guys, whoever you were, for showing up at 4 in the morning. When my fire alarm was going off, you were there in 2 minutes. You were great, and I wish I had had some coffee and stuff to serve you after you went through the house, but thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Sorry.
So, just for that, I'm going to not be brief anymore. No, I'm just kidding. No,
You never are.
yeah. So I just wanted to say, while I do not have the map of the closure, but you have it in your packets. It's going to be basically Easy Street from the Sundial over to Wampum Way, and from on Ho-Hum from the Conquistador up to 100 Easy Street where the post office building is. And the closure itself will be on Sunday, the 5th of March, and we'll be from 7 o'clock till 4, and it's for the all Porsche Grand Display and Carefree, and they're anticipating about 72 cars. And what's nice about this versus like a Thunderbird Art Show is they come in the morning and they'll be gone by the afternoon. And we've talked to all the businesses on Easy Street. We did it on a Sunday to give them the opportunity. If they didn't want to be open, they didn't. If they wanted to, they got an extra day during a nice spring to be open. So everybody was excited about that. I think you'll see most of the businesses open and excited about it. And with that, I just want to let them talk about the show just for a minute here. Mr. Dennis Root.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, I represent the Arizona region of the Porsche Club of America. My comments are going to be a couple minutes, and it's really a hard act to follow that last one. So this is going to be, we've had other car shows out here for the Arizona region many years ago. And as Steve said, we've been working with him and his staff to plan this and do the things we need to do to get approval. And so we will have somewhere between 70 and 90 cars. We have room and space and parking places in the areas that he said. And everybody will get a matching shirt to welcome people. This is the same show I've put on in Seattle. I'm a rain bird from Seattle, so I'm down here now more than I am in Seattle. And I put it on for 10 years. It's just a show and shine, coffee, have fun, enjoy your neighbors, have people come. It's going to be a charity display, so we benefit the Mesa Automotive Services Department for scholarships. We've done this at home as well. And so anything over our costs will go to that. We're going to ask for people to make a voluntary $5 donation. Just put bucket out, and if they want to put $5 in, fine. We've been able to give many $2,500 scholarships from other events that they've done here and also at home. So I think, as Steve said, the people are going to like to have us here. We're going to frequent the restaurants. We are very happy. Even one of the people that heard about it said, "I've just got a Porsche I finished. Can I have it in there?" Yes, absolutely. So we appreciate the opportunity, and we thank Steve and the staff for working with us.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for council?
Where's this, where you have all these cars? You said there's 70 cars gonna be there, did you say? I'm sorry.
Easy Street from just right where the Sundial is across from the City Hall, all the way around to where the other roundabout is, just the side of it. And then Ho-Hum Street just down to the alley. And there's, pardon me?
A lot of cars.
Well, there's actually over 100 parking spaces, and also Steve said we might be able to use the narrow street to the west of the pavilion.
Oh, yeah.
There are about six or eight cars in there.
Steve
So,
would know, but I'm just thinking.
Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
All right, so what I'd like to have is a motion for the street closure to support the all Porsche Grand Display at the Carefree Town Center.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any additional conversation or discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Mayor, if I may, I just want to, while we have people here. One of the things that, when we look at events in the town, I am Steve at carefree.com, or Steve at carefree.org. If you want events and activities in this town, whether it's in the pavilion, wherever you see, I really would generally want to know what events we'd like to see in the town, so, a little commercial there, sorry.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so we've been at this for 2 hours, and we have some other agenda items to go over. So let's take a 5-minute break, so it's 7:06, we'll reconvene.
Councilmember Delicio?
No, we're gonna do it. 'Cause we have the general plan coming up, all of that work. I can let you speak first.
Okay, yeah, give it 5 minutes and they'll start, each applicant that's here tonight will get 2 minutes to speak before they vote. Okay. Alrighty. Poor guy. He's stuck at work and he deals with the juveniles. Speak into the mic.
Okay, it's 7:06, we'll start the meeting.
Oh, that's a good word. Oh, that's a real good one.
I did, you just didn't notice.
Okay.
Okay, the next agenda item, item number 8, is appointment of the Planning and Zoning Commission members. So we have a Planning and Zoning Commission in town, consists of 7 members. And they wear many different hats. So they're the planning agency of the town, planning and zoning agency of the town, they're the Board of Adjustment, they're the Development Review Board. They handle, had a hand in the economic redevelopment plan in the town core. They're involved with the general plan update, general plan amendments. They do many, many different things. And I'm sure they would tell you to a person especially the last few years have been challenging because of COVID, managing all these different issues that came before them. So what we're going to do tonight, I mean, the first time it's been done in some time, and maybe I can certainly remember ever having been done, we're going to reappoint the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we have commissioners who have worked very hard for us for more than a decade, and just done just fantastic work, dedication, coming to every meeting, going to sites. But on the other hand, it's good for the council occasionally to weigh in and give other citizens an opportunity to participate in the process. So what I would expect is the council we'll do this tonight, and then when a new council, will have an election here every 2 years, a new council is seated, we'll revisit it again in 2 years and go through the same process. And the Vice Mayor had a suggestion about that.
Yeah, so I would suggest that by the next meeting that we have staff draw up an ordinance, that we set the Planning and Zoning Commission up like we've set the Town Council. And so we would have 4-year staggered terms, a total of 8 years. The incumbents who are reelected or reassigned tonight will have 2 years. The new ones will get 4 years, and from then on we'll be doing the staggered 4 years.
Okay, so what I'd like to have staff do is draft an ordinance,
An ordinance, right?
and then we'll bring it to council at the next council meeting and talk about it. Thank you. All right, so we have 17 candidates for 7 positions, which is great. I mean, it really shows a lot of interest in what goes on in the town and having an impact. And when you look at the people who step forward, what it tells you is that we have a wealth of talent in this town that we don't tap enough. We saw it on the Public Safety Advisory Committee. You look at those resumes from those 8 or 9 citizens who stepped forward and participated in a very long process that took, I don't know, 12 months or so. And we saw it, we've seen it again for the planning and zoning selection, and you're going to have a chance to hear from those folks tonight. So the way this will work is every candidate, every applicant will have 2 minutes to come up and speak to the council. And I guess fortunately not all 17 of them are here, so it won't be so arduous. So what I will do is I will invite every one of you to come up and introduce yourself and to us and to the public, and we'll get started.
So when the mayor cuts you off, it's because I've told him you've used your 2 minutes.
So the names, I'll just call you up in the order that your name appears on the ballot that each of us have. The first gentleman is Mr. Peter Budnick. Mr. Budnick came up with COVID this week, and he is not here tonight. Heather Burgett is unable to join us. Peter Burns had another commitment. He's an incumbent. Heather is also an incumbent. Next up is Mr. Tom Cross.
So can I stop you for a second? So Peter Burns sent a letter in that he wanted to be read. Do you have it? I think we should go back and do that and then have Tom come up.
Go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Huh?
Go ahead.
What do you want?
Speak.
Oh, well, for those that didn't hear, my name is Tom Cross, and I've lived in Carefree full-time for 22 years. However, I've been in Arizona for 54 years, and been coming to Carefree and Cave Creek area ever since 1971 when I married my bride, whose father had built a home on the west side of Black Mountain back in the late 60s. Needless to say, we've seen a lot of changes in that period of time. I was appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2011, and for the last 2 years have been the chairperson. I've got 36 years' experience as a general contractor, which has been quite helpful in planning and zoning and maintaining a balance between citizen and commercial interests for the town. I was born and raised in a small town south of St. Paul Park, Minnesota. Graduated high school in 1962 and enlisted in the Navy 2 months later, which probably turned out to be one of the wisest decisions I'd ever done. When I got discharged, 3 years later, I went to St. Cloud State College for a couple of years. In the interim, I've been working in construction part-time or in the summers, and decided that maybe I wanted to be in construction where my boss was, as opposed to being a teacher. And at that time, there was only 2 schools in the country that had the 4-year degree in construction engineering and management. One was ASU and the other one was in Florida. I didn't care if I ever go east of Wisconsin again. So I came out here and graduated in '70. Worked a couple of different jobs, one in Chicago, one in Minnesota. Took my poor bride to Minnesota. I dragged her up. She said drugged her up. Had 12 inches of snow on Easter Sunday. But anyhow, we came back, and I worked for another firm for a couple of years, and a subcontractor company came to me, and they wanted to start up a general contracting company. And so whereupon we did in 1974, we named it MGC. You still see that name around.
Yeah, we have to wrap it up.
All right, so let me find a place to wrap it up. So we moved into Carefree in 2001, and because we lived in Flagstaff for 5 years, we came back in 2001, and the rule was no further south than the Carefree Highway. And so whereupon we found Gary Jones' house, restored it, and here we decided we're never going to want to leave Carefree, and they can scatter our ashes around our backyard when the time comes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is the letter from Peter Burns, and hopefully I can read this in less than 2 minutes. Mayor and council members, in early January, I submitted my letter of interest to be reappointed to the town's Planning and Zoning Commission, a position I have held since January of 2021. I understand the council will be considering and selecting new commissioners during the February 7th, 2023 council meeting, and that the applicants will have the opportunity to address the council. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend the meeting due to a long-standing prior commitment. Please accept my apology for the absence, and do not interpret my absence as a lack of interest or commitment to the commission or the town. Quite the contrary. I am very committed and would like the opportunity to continue my service. In addition to the routine cases before the commission, I believe the 2 major issues to come before the commission in the future will be monitoring the progress of the Village Center redevelopment plan and updating of the town's general plan. Both of these topics are of vital importance to the future of the town and are likely to touch upon many complicated and potentially controversial subtopics. I believe my background, temperament, and experience leave me well equipped to consider these issues fairly and intelligently. Thank you for considering my request for reappointment to the commission. Sincerely, Peter Burns. Next up, Ms. Karen Dahlman.
Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody out here. Yeah, my name's Karen Dahlman. I'm new to the area. I've been here almost a year and a half, but doesn't mean I'm not experienced. I actually chose to move out here because this is where I want to retire, so I'm retiring here. I still quasi-work. I'm in the industry of telecommunications, yet I'm also in the industry of psychotherapy. So I've been asked, how did I go from psychotherapy to telecom? And the answer quite simply is, it's all about communications. I feel like I have a background in being a direct communicator, a clear, concise communicator, and I also like to sit there and hear all sides of the story, like tonight. I could have done some therapy tonight, I think. Anyway, so I started out, back in the early 90s as a therapist in private practice in different types of settings for 10 years. And then went from there and came to telecom in 1999. I still have my company. I still sit at the helm. But the important thing that I did in my company, I still do to this day, is that I do attend town council meetings. I do attend HOAs. I go meet with planning and zoning commissioners. I do all the stuff necessary for this position. I've just been doing it on this side, which is okay because I know I can do it on that side too. Anyway, I feel like I have the qualifications for this position, and I'm super excited to be here in Carefree, and I'm so happy to meet some of my neighbors tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Ms. Susie Dymoke.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Carefree Council members. I'm not a public speaker, but I'm going to do my best. I am Susie Dimmock, and I have had the pleasure of speaking with most of you regarding my wish to join the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've been passionate about the Sonoran Desert since my first vacation here in 1995, and fell in love with this beautiful town of Carefree and its pristine surroundings the following year. I became a full-time resident in 2011, and have a proven track record of being involved in the community from that day to this. I'm a 12-year volunteer and ambassador for our Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Desert Foothills Land Trust. Closest to my heart is the Foothills Caring Corps, where I'm now a proud member of the Board of Directors. I've also served on a number of committees for the town over the years. I am an engaged and involved citizen who has time, passion, energy, and will to give further to this gem of a town. I'm a very proud citizen of Carefree. I feel it has been very well governed, its finances managed well, and it would be an honour to contribute to its further success. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ralph Farrow.
My name is Ralph Farrow. I'm a resident of Carefree. Obviously, I wouldn't be running for, to get reappointed to the Planning Commission. Have a diverse background. My wife and I moved here in 2013, and we both retired here. And I got involved right away because I was involved where we were living in California. I was very involved. The biggest thing here, I was on the Water Advisory Committee, which was for Carefree and Cave Creek. Did that for several years. Very involved with that, about getting Carefree together as a whole community. Also, I did a lot of planning and economic development back in California, and have put my 2 cents in here too in regards to economic development and planning. Did a lot of that, like I said, in California. When I lived in Lake Elsinore and Marietta. I just want to continue here with some of the vital issues that have been brought up already by some of the other candidates in regards to our town center and other areas. And we can still do economic development on a much smaller scale than people, anticipate without destroying the beauty of this town. Like I said, my first time I came to Carefree was in 1985, and fell in love with Carefree, and my wife and I both decided that someday we would retire here, and we did. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Sarah Gondel. Sarah is out of town. Lynn Hitchin. Lynn Hitchin is an incumbent, and she's having knee surgery today. She is not here. Sharon Janess.
Good evening, everyone. I applied to the Planning and Zoning Commission because, very simply, Carefree is my home, and I support the vision laid out by the 2030 general plan for our future. I do have some experience in local government, having served on the Planning and Zoning Board of Flossmoor, Illinois. It's a town with demographics very similar to ours, and there we engaged with all the people that make up a community. Homeowners who requested a variance to put in a fence, to developers who wanted to build a strip mall. So I did that while I was in the advertising business, and then I received a degree in interior design, where I studied design principles and architecture, which gives me the ability to read blueprints, elevations, site plans, and I am willing to reach out to all members of our community to ensure that whatever we accomplish is in keeping with Carefree's vision for the future, and that it's done with integrity and a great respect for our remaining open land. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lon Johnson.
Thank you. My name's Lon Johnson, and again, I've had an opportunity to speak to most of the council. Thank you. It's nice to see you in person tonight. My wife and I moved here 2 years ago. We came from the Midwest, not far from Flossmoor. Spent our better part of our lives in Illinois. I've been in the business sector for the past 42 years. I've helped build businesses, and I helped our corporation move from Lake Forest, Illinois to Kenosha, Wisconsin. What I bring is a well-rounded perspective, primarily from the business side. I've done that my whole life. I've traveled this country extensively. I've seen towns that work. I've seen towns that made some mistakes along the way. I currently serve on the Colbert Packaging Board of Directors. We're a privately held company in Wisconsin now. I was a former president of the Institute of Packaging Professionals, and I was an executive board member for DCAT, Drug Chemical Associated Trades out of New York. So I've done quite a bit on the business side. This would be my first coming over to your side. I look forward to that. I look forward to being able to give back a little bit. And like I've heard so many people say, Carefree is a beautiful place. That's why my wife and I picked it. I come into this with a clean slate. I have no personal agenda. I simply want to contribute and give back a little bit. And for what it's worth, I believe that there needs to be a true balance between quality of life and the basic economics that will keep Carefree a vibrant and, a well-run community. So thank you for your consideration. I appreciate it. If this doesn't work out, I'll think of something down the road. But thanks again.
Yeah, we'll put you to work. Okay, thank you. Mr. John Nell.
Mayor, council members, thank you for the time to pitch my spiel for this. I hopefully bring as well to the community members and to the council some skills and some attributes which would be useful for this commission. I'm currently employed with the behemoth to the south. In that aspect, I work in the police department in the crime lab. I'm one of the directors and will actually be one of the lab directors shortly. So I have a lot of aspects over the last 20-some years of doing that, of understanding policies and procedures. I have a critical mind, really detailed. And what I would bring to this appointment is an unbiased view. I can read procedures, policies, I can interpret it. I can listen to arguments, both pros and cons, come to the best determination based on what I hear, maybe not what I want, but what I hear, and how that best interprets or how that best applies to what is best for Carefree. My wife and I have lived north of Lone Mountain since 2003. We love the area. We're full-time residents of Carefree for the last 4 years. We bought an older house, we renovated it. I've worked with the staff of Carefree with a couple building permits and submittals, so I'm familiar with how that works. And we would just like to be able to give back. I'm new to this opportunity is a new vision for me, and I would just like to help Carefree stay carefree. We all live here because it is carefree, and whatever the day-to-day tasks, the general updates, there's lots of things going on. But my goal would be to keep carefree, carefree. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Miss Margaret McKernan.
Can I pull this down? Okay. My name is, I go by Peggy, so Margaret's my formal name. So anyway, thank you for being able for me to stand up here. I mean, all the people that have applied for this are just wonderful, all of you. I guess what I would like to say about me is I've been here about 27 years. I bought my condo, I live in a condo right across the street, Doublegate. And I bought my condo in one afternoon and went back to Chicago and decided this is where I wanted to be. I love Carefree. I love everything about Carefree. I love the people. I love the atmosphere. I love the whole town. To me, it means so much to me. Now, my background is I was an interior designer too for many years, and I did, contracts. I did floor plans. I did helped with building. So I love design. I love landscapes. I did floral design too, landscapes. And I like a community that is warm and welcoming, which Carefree is. I don't ever go out my door without meeting somebody and saying hi to them. And I don't know that you do that in a big city, or if no other place do I know that you have that familiar kind of community that once you see someone, you see them again, you say, oh, I remember you. And so I love that about it. And I guess my feeling is that I've worked in the Carrion Corps. I volunteered at the Desert Foothills Library for over 25 years. And I like to be involved. And I've done the land trust, many different things. And I think it's important to contribute. If I don't contribute, I'm really not part of the town. So I like to contribute. And I think that's what no matter, everybody has different ideas, different feelings that whether they want this or they want that. But I think the most important thing is that okay, Cheryl. So anyway, I think the most important thing is that the integrity and the respect. And also, I think it's important, I'm a big advocate for reaching out to the community. And I'm in condos, and I'd like to do a condo, group so that everybody's connected. And I think that's the most important thing that I could do. So with that,
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Miss Mary Roberts.
So be careful, the alarm is on.
Thank you, Mayor Crane, Town Council, staff, and residents. Thank you for this opportunity to be considered as a candidate for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Very briefly, the first 50-plus years of my life were spent in New York State, so I'm a fellow New Yorker, working and getting my education. I spent 40 years as a banker and retired as a vice president with HSBC. In 2000, what brought us to Arizona? My son Greg wanted to go to Prescott College. So our first trip was to Prescott, and we stayed in the Boulders. We continued to return to see him in Prescott, and we fell in love with the Carefree area. We eventually bought our first house in Scottsdale and then built in the Boulders a new house. My husband and I have been full-time residents since 2012. Since making this our home, I've served in a number of volunteer positions and would be honored to serve as a volunteer on planning and zoning. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Diane Roth.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Crane. My name is Diane Roth. I decided to apply to the Planning and Zoning because of my interest in the future direction of Carefree. Given my retail background, I feel I can contribute to the revitalization of the downtown. I also feel I would bring the merchant's point of view to the table. I owned and operated a successful high-end boutique for 35 years in New Canaan, Connecticut. During that time, I served on the board of the Chamber of Commerce and founded a merchants association. we formed a multi-pronged plan to attract new businesses to the downtown retail district. We initiated a PR campaign and online presence, which resulted over time in 100% occupancy of the retail district. Our objective being the long-term success of both commercial and residential parts of town, since these are the foundations of a healthy community. I became familiar with Carefree over the 20 years I came here annually to visit my sister. She'd pick me up at the airport. We'd immediately go to the tea room, sit down and order tea and the scones. And afterwards, we'd walk and talk to the different merchants, because as a retailer, whenever you're on vacation, you talk to other retailers, you ask them how's it going, what's going on, everything else. So I got to know a lot of them. Carefree is not immune to the changes taking place in this state. Being involved in planning and zoning is a great way to help shape the changes while keeping the character and spirit of the town. Also recognizing the need to move forward to a successful future, which balances the needs of all the players. As a commissioner, I intend to bring an objective, independent, and collaborative voice while working in a productive and respectful way with my fellow members. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, Ms. Sharon Smith.
Mayor Crane, Vice Mayor Croyer, council members, Carefree staff, and fellow citizens. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council. I fell in love with this town nearly a decade ago during a visit with family in the area. I bought a condo here in 2015 and moved in late 2019 following my retirement from the presidency of the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg. I'm an economist by training and have spent my career in a variety of leadership positions in business, government, and academia. During that time, I also served on many boards, both public and private, as a member and/or chair. I understand the commitment in time and effort that board service entails and appreciate the important role that boards play in communicating with their constituencies and in assuring the effective functioning of organizations. When I moved here, I hope to continue such service. Unfortunately, the pandemic put most of those plans on hold. I am now eager to serve this community, helping it to embrace opportunities while keeping faith with its unique history and special character. Accordingly, to increase my understanding, I have been a regular attendee at town council meetings and have studied the existing general plan and attended the February 1st workshop on the new plan. I am eager to join the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's our last speaker from the applicants. So it's important to know that of our 7 incumbent Planning and Zoning Commissioners, 6 applied. 1, Phil Corso, had a change of heart and he withdrew. And Dan Davies, who's served on the commission for about 6 years now, decided not to reapply or not to apply. And I would also remind everyone, so we have 17 applicants, we picked 7. And so going forward, we can only pick 7. That means 10 folks will leave tonight without being selected. But we want you to remain engaged. We want to hear from you. We will be thinking about other opportunities to challenge you and to help us. Because one thing we figured out, there's a lot of talent out there, like I mentioned earlier. So now what we'll do is each of us on the council has a ballot, and each of us will select 7 commissioners and then hand off the ballot to the town clerk, and she'll tally them up. And so for someone to be selected, they will need to have at least 4 votes. Okay.
Crane, Councilmember Delicio is still on the line, and he did send in his votes.
Okay, thank you.
We've got to have a rerun from this one, right? And so I guess these three then, or here, this one and this one, right? This one and this one, and this one, rerun, so, because they're even. So they're on.
Where did you see the picture of the
And then 1, 2.
Look here, please, right here. What does that say? I can't read your name.
7.
7.
So those are done. Okay. So this one, this one, this one needs to rerun, correct?
Could hardly hear what was.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Yeah.
3. 1, 2, 3. Missing one. 7, 7, 7. Mayor Crane and council, we have our first 3 candidates. We need to have a second round, please.
Okay.
The second round will consist of Karen Dahlman, Susie Dymoke, Tom Cross,
Why don't you just tell us the 3
One.
that we won? That won, and then it's easier.
and Ralph Farrow.
So who was appointed?
We now have 7 votes, for Peter Burns, Mary Roberts, Sharon Smith.
Who's the third?
And no one else received 4 or more?
They did, but they're even,
Okay.
so,
So that's why we're voting only on 4?
yeah, you've got ties, so you're gonna have to,
Well, but that's 7 people.
Well, yeah, so we can vote for 4, and those 4 people have each received 4 votes, and I would say they were elected.
we've got 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. But one of them didn't get the 4. There's 2 that didn't get 4 votes, so you're missing 1.
Okay,
So
so
we
who-
have to
So wait,
rerun.
So, let me just understand this too. So we have 3 that are on.
You have 3 that are on,
Congratulations,
right.
everybody. We should just make a second ballot. We shouldn't be limited to these 4 people, is my.
Okay, all right, then I misunderstood the instructions, correct.
Okay, so did any candidates get 4 votes?
None,
None.
no.
Okay.
Wait, but you said Peter Burns, Mary Roberts.
For the rest,
Okay.
you
so
don't
now-
have, right,
So we're not gonna vote for Peter, Mary, or Sharon because they're in,
correct,
but we can now vote for
rewrote,
4 others.
correct.
Okay.
And we each
Yeah,
get
I
to
got
vote for 4.
They have it and I've got it.
How many?
4.
Vote for 4 out of the remaining list.
Correct.
Except for the 3.
Slide by yellow.
See, you don't have the last one. Okay, I'm just waiting for Commissioner Delicio.
Old Vince, once again.
This one,
Good call.
this one, and this one, unless he changes it. Yeah, otherwise we're done.
It was apparent that my nephew was drinking with his buddies over the weekend at my sister's house when the vodka bottle was frozen. The old vodka bottle trick.
There we go. Yep, we got it. Mayor and council, we have our final votes. The remaining 4 is Tom Cross, Karen Dahlman, Susie Dymoak, Ralph Farrow. Congratulations.
Okay, congratulations, and thank you, Candace, for going through that. That was quite an exercise. And I would just, for those who weren't selected, as I said before, we very much appreciate you coming out and applying for the job. And there's many things going on in the town. You're gonna have opportunities to help us out, and we want you to do that. And we want your neighbors to do it too, so just let them know. So, and one last comment. I would also say that we had a strong planning and zoning commission for the last several years, and we have an equally as strong commission now. So we're gonna put them to work, and they'll serve us well. Yes, sir.
Would you please repeat the names of the commissioners for us?
Sure. Peter Burns, Tom Cross, Karen Dahlman, Susie Dymoak, Ralph Farrow, Mary Roberts, Sharon Smith. You can, okay, please stand up. Okay. Okay, thank you all.
John, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
I want to echo what John had mentioned, is that we really, for those who did not receive the position tonight, we still have lots of other opportunities out there to be involved. And just to share a story, when I first started 5 years ago, I applied for the P&Z job against young lady Stacy here, who was far more qualified than I was. And but I eventually, here I am now on the town council, so it happens. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, item number 11. Item number 11 is a public hearing. Review and discussion regarding amendment to the Carefree Arizona Code of Ordinances, Town Code related to the repeal and replacement of Article 6, offenses, Chapter 6 through 8, short-term rentals, responsible party requirements, and other violations to align with recently passed state legislation. So, Town Planner, I'll hand it off to you.
Mayor, we skipped accidentally
Oh.
item number 9, the redevelopment plan, so.
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Okay, well, if that's all right. Is
Am I on?
Matt here?
No, Matt's not here.
So why don't we just carry on and we'll go back to,
Well, Matt's not gonna be here.
he's not gonna be here.
No.
Let's just carry on with this and we'll circle back to you when we're done. Go ahead.
I'll be fast.
Mayor, members of Town Council, thank you again for your time this evening. Actually, thank you for your real thoughtful, going back to our last agenda item, you're very thoughtful and time. I know you put a lot of time into understanding the role and understanding who the candidates were, and I really appreciate that. It is important. It's very important to me.
We are here now tonight to talk about, as the second reading for the short-term rentals and responsible party requirements and other violations. The ordinance that we discussed, I appreciated a lot of the feedback that I got at our first hearing. And I was fortunate to have a lot of support, and in particular from a couple of our residents, Susie Dymock, who's one of our new council members, Dale Richards, Janet Vivas, and also some other input from other residents, as well as the city of Scottsdale. It helped me. It was nice to kind of have this collaborative effort with all facets in the town. And it was important because we were looking strongly at the city of Scottsdale. They prepared this model ordinance. I did look into, and I think based on some of the feedback, again, enhanced, I think, the ordinance to make it as tight as we possibly can within the legal limits and boundaries. And by doing so, I also did research with Paradise Valley's ordinance. So with that said, I'll try to go through this quickly. I know that it's been a longer night than usual for us, so I'll shorten it up to about 45 minutes. So from the first reading, as you recall, what was happening in the recent legislation is that the state government now, or state statute, has allowed us to actually permit short-term rentals, which is a big deal in the sense that if you violate your permit, you get your permit pulled. And so in this ordinance tonight that's being presented to you, we discussed this last time, is that now there are penalties and potential pulling of your permit if you are a bad offender, and I use that description in my report, because really I think that's at the heart of what the problem with short-term rentals, and particularly how it's hit our community, is that we're considered sort of a more quiet and peaceful community. And really, the bad offenders are the ones that are disturbing that peace and causing some havoc for us. And so hopefully with these new requirements in terms of, one, having a license in place, having penalties in place, and also then having the public health and safety requirements, puts a stronger onus on those that are looking to operate a short-term rental. One being related to fire safety, other related to public health, and lastly, circumstances relating to life safety. So then just to briefly, and I hope it was clear in your packet in the report, that the modifications that were made from the first reading was to better define and understand what noise nuisance are, define what an excessive noise is so that it can be considered a nuisance and attached to the short-term rentals as it was attached now to any residential property in Carefree. That's kind of the key aspect of that, as well as unlawful gatherings. Again, these things are defined, and those now not only would be an issue if you were if you were not a short-term rental, but now they're applied to short-term rentals as well. I looked at occupancy more in terms of defining the number of residents allowed in a single-family unit. Now that's being applied to a short-term rental unit as well, which also then talks about the definition for family. What's important to note about this is that what my discussions with the city of Scottsdale in particular is that while the number of people that are visiting or the number of people occupying a short-term rental is a concern, it's more about the guests and the people that actually aren't staying there that are really the issue. So it was not that it's good that we have the occupancy defined. I don't think that's really what's going to solidify the ordinance. It's more about the noise and the unlawful gatherings. We've also added to responsible parties so that there's both an emergency contact as well as a complaint contact. I think that was somewhat of an issue. And that way we now have, residents have more of an opportunity, or the town has an opportunity to reach out to more than one person if we can't get something addressed immediately. Also taken from, this was a comment I think from our last hearing, that to have a dedicated phone line. Again, we are trying to look for things to have short-term rentals jump through as many hoops as possible that were legal. So we did add that, and that was something that came out of the Paradise Valley short-term rental ordinance. As you also see, there's additional town code amendments. Those are really tied back to where we define noise in the zoning ordinance and where we sort of define minors and unlawful gatherings. So that needed to be brought forward, and you'll see it was brought forward as called an emergency motion, so that all of this can sort of be approved together. So while you did see there's 3 agenda items, I promise I'm only talking for one time. But you will then, as we continue through, we'll make separate motions for each of those amendments. And lastly, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but related to those occupancy and family definitions, those are things that are found in our zoning ordinance, and so we'll be coming back to you in a couple months. I'll be going to planning and zoning next month to talk about that amendment to the ordinance, and then to town council. That'll just sort of finalize. It does not, I think, affect the enforcement and the validity of the proposed ordinance in front of you now. It's just some housekeeping that we'll have to get to in a couple months. So with that said, again, this is the second of the 2 required readings. There are the 2 additional ordinances, which again really kind of build upon and support the proposed main ordinance of the short-term rentals. And as I just mentioned, that will be bringing back amendments to the zoning ordinance, I would say in April, because we'll go to planning and zoning in March. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from council?
Yes, if I may. Just a silly question, I'm not sure. Dedicated phone line in the house, is that the bat phone? Is that the house?
Mayor, I mean, that's a great description. It's not necessarily defined as a particular landline. It could be sort of through a wireless service, but yes, it's a phone that's tied to
one individual's phone,
a
personal cell phone that we, okay.
It won't be a cell phone, but it would be a phone that is designated to the unit. It can't be taken with somebody. It's for the unit, that the unit can be contacted if, you know, kind of for just another means of trying to address some
They used to
issues
put
that
them on
might
the
be
wall? Is that right? Yeah.
I think they're wireless now, but they can do whatever they like if they've got that, if they've got those telephone lines. But you'll probably see a lot more of the internet service phones. But you're welcome.
Any other questions? So I have a question. Casitas, if there's a casita on a lot, can that be rented as either a short-term or a long-term rental?
Mayor and members of the council, no, it may not be rented separately. That is something that we've had in our zoning ordinance even before. I've been here over 9 years now, or almost 9 years. So no, they cannot rent that separately. And the state statute does allow us to abide by our zoning requirements. So now if there is a short-term rental that rents both the main property and the casita, for example, there could be 2 families that might be renting a short-term rental that has a home and a casita, then it can all be rented together, but it cannot be rented out separately.
So you have to rent everything on the property, everything on the lot?
Mayor, yes, correct, better said, yes.
The one party,
Yes.
Another question. I'm familiar with 2 instances where short-term rental tenants wandered off their property into the desert. So there was nothing malicious about it. Maybe they're from a different place. They thought it was quite interesting. They walked around, but then they walk into somebody else's backyard, and those folks are sitting out there having breakfast, and they're startled to see these people trespassing in their backyard. So is it possible in the section that talks about a posted notice in the unit to include like the boundaries of the property, something to alert the tenants that they ought to stay on their property?
Mayor, members of the council, yes, I think what might be best, so that we don't see survey stakes popping up all over the place or signs about trespassing, what I think might be a way to address this, maybe as a test case, is to, as part of those notifications are also that are required to be posted in the units themselves. You can easily find an aerial map from Maricopa County's assessor's webpage and just try to, provide information that asks those guests to be mindful of the property boundaries that they see in a diagram. So I think that might be a best first approach, and we can include that, I would say, in the permitting process. I don't think that's something that anybody would object to. If we feel that we're not getting this information, we can definitely incorporate it into the ordinance, but I think it's a pretty easy thing to, and because now this ordinance will require inspections particularly when by a building official initially. We can be sure that that's part of the posted information.
Okay, I'd be satisfied with that. And if we pass this tonight, there's just a lot of work that town staff has to do to implement this by March 11th, because that's when it would become effective.
Correct, Mayor, correct, council members. Yes, we'll be diligently working on forms. You know, I need to work together with code enforcement and with the building department. You know, and this is sort of a lot of how legislation works in general between municipalities. It's nice that our neighbors are willing to share information, so we'll try to build, you know, we want it to be as simple but as tight as possible, because you're right, it is going to be, and it's important, but it is something that is going to become an issue that the town staff will have to manage. So we want to make sure that it's kind of easy on both ends, I would say.
Yep, exactly. So for those who don't know, the city of Scottsdale and Paradise Valley have been very helpful, and I'm sure they'll help you with forms and in launching the program. And I would also say there's been some citizens here in the town who have been very helpful in pulling this together. Susie Dymoke, Janet Vivas, Dale and Karen Roberts, just great input, so thank you very much. So this is a public hearing, so now we'll open up the hearing to the public. We have two slips. Paul Sharman. Oh, yes, sir. Yep, come on up.
So this is being recorded, so I need to make sure this is good sound in this.
Well, you sound great,
okay,
thank you.
good. So I've got a question about, do I have a time limit?
3 minutes.
Okay. So do we have a message board or a communication board to where all the information that we could get, like go into a website or something and get information on what we're doing here tonight, and then like feedback from you guys by asking questions? And specifically, I would like to see when you get actually this 24-hour person that's going to call if there's a problem, can that be put on so we can see it and we can call it? So if we've got a neighbor that's causing a problem, we don't have to go through the sheriff's department or Dennis. We can go directly, just call the 24-hour number and say we got a problem here. Can that be posted somewhere for each property? And we need a property, I think, list of who owns a VRBO or a short-term rental here, but also attached to each one of those is that 24-hour number.
If you like, Mayor, Mayor, Mr. Sharman, yes, as part of the whole permit process, and we'll be developing the application so that the town will have that information. That information becomes public record. We will look at what information is we can provide on our webpage. I mean, we do have I think we provide a small information. You know, it's been small lately based on just the regulations that we have. We can look into. We do have software. I've seen other municipalities that show locations mapped on their web pages. So absolutely, I mean, I'm well, if you'd like to send me an email of a list of things that you'd like to see included on our web page, we can look to see how we can incorporate that.
Okay.
But that is our intent, to make this information available. Neighbors, part of the process as well, and it's in the ordinance, is that, and granted, it's not a notification townwide, but it is a notification requirement by short-term rentals to send them to adjacent properties and properties across the street. So, you know, you may not be the person that's right next door, but if you're a couple doors down, I'm sure your neighbor will be happy to share that information with you. But we will have that available as well. It is public information.
Okay, and if there's already been the 3 strikes and you're out on a property already, is that going to be, once this is adopted, retractive?
No, Mayor, no, it won't be retroactive. Just
okay.
Be good try, but no, okay. Unfortunately, we don't have that as part of the state statute.
Very good. I didn't think I was going to get that.
But you know, if they're bad offenders now, more than likely, well, hopefully this cleans up their act. But you know, we'll start the clock on that.
So I'll just list what I will email it to you, but I'd like to also see that we have a map of all of them. We already, you mentioned that, a map of where they're at. And when we have a complaint, what is the procedure to actually, I mean, I've gone to the sheriff's office and they were very prompt, by the way. But besides the 24-hour, if we can have access to the 24-hour person, that's great. But then for an actual official complaint, how does it come to the city or the town?
Mayor, that's an interesting question. I think that we'll have to figure out a means of being sure that, because Dennis Randolph, the code enforcement officer, will be the main point of contact for any kinds of complaints. I'll have to look to him to see how we will be able to communicate with the short-term rental. I mean, we do hear if Maricopa County Sheriff's Office has been contacted. I mean, we will be notified in that regard. But that is, I think that if we're finding that people are coming to the town saying, well, I've called these numbers, I've called this emergency line and nothing's happening, that yes, it just needs to be brought to the town. But we'll try to figure out how we can create a communication system with the short-term rentals as well.
And Mayor, members of council, we do have on our new website one point of contact that comes in 24/7 to our website where somebody can file a complaint. So we regularly get residents that have emailed us about a pothole, about overgrowth of desert material into the street, things of that nature. Certainly short-term rentals can be part of that notification. So 24 hours we will be notified of that complaint, and staff is available. They all have cell phones and they can respond to those respective emails.
And where do we find the access point?
Where's the contact information on our website?
On the homepage?
Yes, the homepage.
It's on the homepage?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll bring it up. You can sign up to subscribe and get our emails, and that also has our information on it all the time. You can also email us at info@carefree.org, and that can also communicate with us at any time.
Okay, great. So when I contact the sheriff's office, you mentioned them. Do you hear about that each time? Is that some requirement that they report that to you?
Mayor, I believe it is.
It is? Okay. So we don't need to coordinate that getting back to Dennis. It's always going to get back to Dennis then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I'm glad to hear that they were quick. They were quick
Oh,
to
they were great.
respond.
They answered the phone, and they said, do you want a notification back? I said, yes. The officer called me back, said I've shut it down.
Okay.
And it was very loud, he said.
Good.
In parentheses, and I go, great. And I didn't hear anything else, and I
Okay.
haven't since.
Good.
It was great.
Good.
Yeah. I did try talking to the people twice, and
Right.
that didn't work.
Yeah, that's okay. It's probably best just to, that's why I think these phone numbers are important, so you don't have to interact directly with the guests, yeah.
And for the actual complaints then, we could always go to Dennis and his department then to find out a list of all the complaints on a particular property.
Mayor, yes.
So that will work.
We'll have to figure out a means of documenting and record keeping of those complaints, correct? Because again, depending upon what type of complaint and to the extent if it's a verified violation, then we're going to need to keep track of those.
Great, okay. I think I'm almost done.
Okay.
Oh, well, a little more. The excessive noise, I still find that very vague. Is that true? It's trying to define that and actually prove that that was a violation.
Mayor, Mr. Sharman, you know, we discussed this internally. There are means of measuring noise with equipment. We seem to feel that the way the ordinance is written, you're right, it is somewhat subjective in the sense that you're looking for either two reasonable people to consider the noise to be loud or excessive, as well as, or law enforcement. But other than going down the road of having equipment that, you know, for one, we have to maintain, we have to have people trained in using, it actually may be, I think, I believe it's tighter, although being somewhat subjective, to have it the way that we have it right now.
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
I didn't think that was real. Just go grab your neighbor and you've got two people that say it's too loud. That works for me.
Reasonable people, but yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
So
But and it seems to, and if I may add too, it seems to be working the way that we have it now. You know, obviously the short-term rental and noise is somewhat on the newer end, but you know, it applies to barking dogs and other disturbances, and I'm always of the mindset that if it's not broken, why try to fix something that's not broken?
Okay. And as far as the fines that come, who actually is responsible for doing that? I did read some information in there about that, but can you clarify that? Who, to know that they are being fined, who do we go to and say, did you do it?
Mayor, Mr. Sharman, how to know, I mean, did the town actually
Did fine them?
Fine them? We would let you know that. I mean, you know, as it's defined, you know, depending upon the type of offense, there's different penalties associated with that. I don't see a reason why the town would issue a citation for a civil offense of $1,000 and not collect it. But
sometimes you know, the ones that are hearing it and complaining want to know that it's being followed up, and they are realistically being fined for these.
Right. Mayor, Mr. Sharman, I would say, you know, it's public record. If we issue a citation, it has to go through the process, and so it would be documented, and there would be, you know, it would go down to the court in essence and it does say in the ordinance that, I believe that it says that the judge may not lessen that penalty. So I think it's a documented process.
Okay.
So I don't know how we would say, hey, you know, we wouldn't necessarily, I don't think, on, you know, on typical agenda item that we would report on that, but yes, it goes through the legal process.
Okay.
Mayor, I would just suggest that if the questions are more administrative, maybe the two of you can get together later.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
Oh, yeah.
Mayor and Council and Ms. Bridge Dunsack, actually, we have a public records request form on our website, and any public information can be disclosed to the public. There are certain redactions for personal identifying information, but any of our public records are available to the public.
Okay.
And they go through my office.
All right, and I'll part ways.
No, but we'd like to hear from you, but maybe use a passing business card or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys can talk. All right. Okay, thank you. Ms. Sue Hardy.
Thank you. I'm Susan Hardy. I live at 34802 Whileaway Road, a few houses down from Mr. Paul Sharman. I have a couple of questions. I don't expect the answers right away or tonight, but they are related to concerns. The first one stands alone, is the question of why the 6-month allowance for ensuring the required pool barriers. I have two concerns behind that question. One has to do with the child endangerment during the rental of a short-term rental for those 6 months, that there aren't adequate barriers, required barriers. And the second has to do with what protects the city from liability during those 6 months, should there be a drowning during that 6-month grace period. My second question really dovetails to the rather specific questions that Paul's asking. And this is just a more overall observation as I read through this ordinance. It strikes me that there are numerous opportunities for complaints or concerns to fall through the cracks. throughout this ordinance. The questions that are related to who's accountable, who's responsible, who calls this emergency contact, how does that information get to you? For example, I did not even know, because I had not been notified by the owner of the VRBO, that I had a VRBO behind my fence until they violated the ordinance, or a sound violation, whatever it was at the time. So if I don't get a notification from them, how do I know my neighbors are the properties behind my home, unless I get some kind of general carefree map, which doesn't seem quite practical to me. So that's a question of how do you enforce that? So I think this has to do with questions around enforcement. If I call law enforcement, does law enforcement know? Do they have a list of every emergency contact for every single VRBO or short-term rental in Carefree? What is the process that law enforcement follows for letting the town attorney know that violations, that there were responses and emergency calls and violations? I think without a very clearly defined and transparent process for communication, tracking, documentation, and a systematic way of informing the neighbors, the affected people at least, about the process. If I hadn't encountered this incident that I'm thinking about, I wouldn't have known that Paul had lived through the same thing for far more hours than I suffered through during a month that I wasn't there at home, and that this had happened before. I did make a report to the I believe you said Dennis is the person. I heard nothing back. I CC'd it to several people. So I don't know what happened to that, but I did know it was like the third or fourth, if you count the fact that I didn't get notified it was a VRBO. That's 4 violations, and I didn't get any kind of feedback. So those kinds of things concern me. I think we really need to look at this and look at where are the cracks in communication, where can it slip through, because for any time that happens, that really degrades the quality of life here in Carefree. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, good points. Stanzak?
Mayor and Ms. Hardy, I can just kind of quickly answer a couple of those things. First, with respect to the child barriers, I think the 6 months is in the state statute, but I think it also is trying to allow for some reasonable amount of time for those that, I know to reasonable people like us, you have a pool, why wouldn't you have a barrier? But, you know, some of our homes go back to the late 60s, so I think they're trying to find a reasonable amount of time to get people into compliance. But ultimately, it's that property owner's liability, regardless of the fact that, you know, we've made this legislation and basically we're putting them on notice. I think we're in kind of a better position. I'm not an attorney, but.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, if somebody builds a new pool, they have 6 months to put in adequate barriers?
No, well, they put in the barrier along with the pool construction.
So that's what I was like, why does it take 6 months?
Well, I don't think that it takes 6 months. I think they're just allowing that period for this to kick in. It's something that they've never had to do before. They do have to get their permits and things like that. So, you know, to get a permit and to actually install it, you're right, it probably doesn't take 6 months. I think they just want to get everybody to come into compliance.
Maybe one suggestion I would have with that, because I am concerned about the child safety issue, more than I am about the liability. And I don't care about what the state allows. I'm concerned about the child safety. I would expect, and want the homeowner, I mean, the owner, to notify the families who are coming with young children that there are no pools, specifically letting them know if there are no pool barriers in place.
Mayor, Ms. Hardy, we can look into some ways to tighten this. And with regards to, I think, what you mentioned about notification so that you know what Airbnb or short-term rental is in your neighborhood, is that we weren't allowed to do that until now. This ordinance now lets us do that notification. I think also, you know, it became serious to town administration, to council. We invested in the software that we now know where the active short-term rentals are. So, you know, we're getting better at this, and the legislation's getting better too. So, but we're, you know, always open to suggestions. And like you said, you know, we worked through this from the first time around to get a tighter ordinance. I think it's tight, and now we've got a, you know, a little bit of growing pains of, you know, breaking ourselves into the new requirements.
I just think we're gonna have to be very clear, what are the expectations and accountability? You know, do we expect law enforcement to notify the town of Carefree, or do I need to do that to make sure, hey, I called the sheriff out, you know, I wanna make sure you know about it.
Right. Mayor Ms. Hardy, I don't think you have to do that. What I would say, though, if you were able to call MCSO and they got to you in a timely manner, that's the best, that's the best enforcement that you can get. So.
What is the procedure then for following?
Well, then they'll let us know, and then we'll document it.
This has been like a horrible situation.
I think we've gotta be real clear and transparent that law enforcement's always gonna let you know.
Okay. I mean, they do, but okay.
Any good comments about the pole barrier? Thank you. Okay, that closes the public hearing. So now we need to vote.
You need
What
to
should
vote.
the motion be?
You need to make 3 separate motions, actually. So the first motion would be on the first item, which was ordinance 2022-03. I think you can simply state, you know, motion to approve, deny, whatever you'd like to do, this ordinance, and then move on to the next and move on to the final.
Okay, let's tackle that one first. Can I have a motion regarding ordinance number 2022-03?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-03.
We have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I think we have it. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Commissioner Delicio, how do you vote? Commissioner Delicio? Well, his phone is still active.
Okay. Let's just go. How should the second motion read?
You can similarly, it's ordinance, oh, it doesn't have the ordinance number on here. The second one is ordinance number 2023-02.
All right, so I will entertain a motion for the approval of ordinance number 2023-02. You have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-02.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
I'll show you. And then the last one is 2023-03.
Wasn't that the, we already did that one, didn't we?
Nope, that's unique. Okay, a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-03.
So I need to catch up. I don't know which one that is.
Isn't that the one for the, that's the short-term rental one, we just did it.
No,
This is the,
I know the numbers sound similar.
Two.
Yeah, that was the short term. Yeah, thank you.
Gotcha.
They are kind of like a.
What does that all involve, that last one?
So the second one that we did was the one about the noise, 2023-02. This is about just curfews, and it's a very small one in terms of minors and,
So it supports the original.
right,
Ordinance
the
that we
unlawful
approved.
gatherings, and yeah.
So I believe we have a motion from Councilman Geiger.
2023-03.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And so a lot of work has to be done to implement these.
Yep.
And we want to, especially for the folks who have suffered through this stuff, we want to hear from you. I mean, I understand that's why you're here tonight. So talk to our staff as we implement it. You know, it may not be a panacea of doing it right out of the box, but we can tweak it and make it better. And we are not allowed to disallow, to forbid short-term rentals. So we have to work with the tools the state has given us, and they're limited. But we're pushed it, we have implemented the maximum allowable. And now the key is to implement it and make it work. So thank you.
Stacy?
Thank you. Okay, next up.
Oh, wait, John, I had
What?
one question for Stacy, please, pardon me. Sorry. Is it presumed that the owner of the VRBO is signing off on the fact that on each time someone rents that property, that the barriers are up around the pool, the maps for escapement are there, you know, all those types of, do they complete all that? Is there someone who inspects that, or they are assumed to have done that already?
Well, it's kind of a mayor and council members, it's kind of a twofold process. So what it will be is in the application, they have to identify that, yes, they've complied with all these requirements, and then we'll do a follow-up site inspection.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, and our final item of the evening.
Since my name's on the table.
Review and discussion and possible action to approve the redevelopment plan executive summary. Mr. Propopek.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. As you all know, that in our last council meeting, we approved, or you approved, the Village Center redevelopment plan. And as part of that, one of the asks was to make it a little bit user-friendly for everybody, including the public, that we put together an executive summary to that. And so I worked with Matt, Michael Baker International. We had some money that we had kind of put aside for doing some economic analysis that we didn't need, and so he was able to shift that over, and we were able to get Michael Baker to take that task on and put together the executive summary. And it's basically what we did was we just looked at taking some of the key elements straight out of the plan, and as part of that, just create really a 4-page document that would be, and it's really 3 pages because the first one's a cover page, that would kind of be the backbone to what information we put on a website. And it can be a brochure, it can be a 4-page download, something that can go in different formats, has the basic information, will pique people's interest to be able to get to the actual plan, but we just keep that consistent message all the way through. And so, which one is it? And so really what you have here is, I'm going to skip the cover page, is the introduction, and this just covers the why, what, and how of, you know, the redevelopment area and the redevelopment plan and the process that we generally went through to get to that. The second part, and this is really, to me, the money part of the plan, and this is the master planning. And one of the things I wanted to note, when I believe in your copy that you received, it didn't have the forward thinking on there when we made the replacement from Progressive. And Matt's recollection was that we just removed it all together. But going back through the minutes, he went back through his, and thanks to the mayor, kind of pointing that back out, that it was in the minutes, we put the forward thinking in there. And he's already made that correction to the executive summary and to the plan. So we do have the final version of the plan and the executive summary ready to go. And with what's outlined on here, and it's one of the things I wanted to point out, was the idea of density. And density is also can be discussed in commercial as intensity as well. And one of the things that we put on there, and you look down, is the master plan build-out matrix, and that literally looks at kind of the net changes in square footage. And what you can see there is there's nothing that says we're doing anything massive on a massive scale when it comes to square footage. So the idea is that, you know, we're really taking what we have, we're going to enhance it, we're going to be, you know, looking at ways to do adaptive reuse. So in a case of like a Los Portales, maybe Los Portales loses some square footage in commercial and we add it somewhere else. So this isn't about, you know, plopping down, you know, 4-story buildings all over the place. Otherwise you'd see, you know, significant changes in that. And this is very consistent. Matter of fact, it's a little bit more toned down from where those numbers are in the general plan. So hopefully this will be all reflected as we go through the general plan process. And then this final part is the action planning. And when you look through the objectives, and one of the key strategic initiatives that you see is an objective number 2. It's the last checkbox on there, and that was one of the ones that was brought up in the last meeting, is the idea that we're gonna modify the existing development standards and looking at policies and zoning changes that we can make based on the things that we've heard from the community and from council and from others, to help really look at the quality and look at the flexibility that we can have to really make this a functional area. And then, you know, kind of going through the priorities, one of the ways that we're gonna do this, and this is important for the planning and zoning members, and congratulations, by the way, to everybody. You'll have to hear me talk a lot, unfortunately. And so, because this stuff's really important here, and one of the things that we're gonna be doing when we look at the redevelopment plan process is gonna be the implementation is gonna be placed pretty heavily on the P&Z shoulders. And so one of the things that I work on as a staff member is a 24-month business plan. And a big component of that is gonna be taking that big, long list of implementation steps that were in there, and we're gonna need to distill those down to the things that are important to do today, and look at how we want to phase how that program goes together, so that we can do the things that are in the implementation program, understand them, you know, where they fit in sequencing, and then also figure out, you know, how we put accountability to the results, and again, get people engaged as part of the process as well. As you can see, this community has a lot of people who are interested in what's going on, and we just need to keep them engaged, and so that's going to be a big part of it. So this is kind of the list of the things that we're going to be focused on, and in particularly one of the things is going to be looking at how we can address design review standards for the town, whether it's through improved signage. I think I got another, do I have one more slide? No. Whether it's going to be through improved signage, packages for buildings. You know, one thing I'm working on hard with building owners is that they all come in with their own individual master sign plans, like Spanish Village has. And so we can improve that. And there's just little things that we need to focus on, but then we can look at the design consistency. Is there ways that we can impact colors, the types of architecture we'd like to see moving forward? And then one thing that we'll be talking about is our programs that we can implement that can impact revitalization. And a lot of communities have been successful at doing things like matching grants, where you put money in, small amount of money in, and it allows to the leveraging of private dollars to go back in for revitalization, and also as part of not just revitalization, but getting buildings up to code is important to you. A lot of these buildings are old, and so we just want to make them safer. The other thing that I just want to focus on that we'll be looking at is the town hall site, and that's going to be very key. And it's, you know, I'm already looking at RFPs and things that other communities have done. I think one of the things that's going to be very important, and hopefully I can even work with some of the folks who didn't get on the P&Z tonight, but let them be part of a stakeholder group and some other that can really look and analyze what we'd like to do with that specific site. Obviously, with that, we'll have to look at what we're going to do with the town hall as well. And so it's going to be kind of a two-phased analysis that we're going to need to do. And so those are when we talk about implementation, those are kinds of the things that we're going to be focused on. And I know I went beyond the executive summary, but I know that you had asked for me to go a little bit beyond the executive summary to address these issues. So without any questions?
Well, I'll just say I'm glad you went into those details, because these are subjects that came up when you were here a month ago. So thank you. And you did a good job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from council?
I just have one. Opportunities for non-tax revenue, and how does that benefit the town? You don't have to get in a lot of detail. I just understand the concept.
No, I'm glad, Councilmember Johnson, I'm glad you brought that up. That's very important, and one of the things when we start looking at, particularly with the town hall site, is we can sell it,
okay,
or we can lease it. And so we do have the opportunity, and so a lot of communities get into leasing where you can get more like a recurring revenue stream that's non-tax type revenue. So those are the kinds of things that we can start to look at, and then when we start looking at other revenue sources and ways that maybe even property owners can contribute, whether it's through improvement districts, or we can even look at enhanced municipal districts, or even districts where the businesses contribute and they offset operating costs for things that they'd like to see, whether it's signage, or if they wanted like a little mini bike program to take patrons around. There's a lot of things that other communities do where they get revenue that way.
Any other questions from council? All right, can I have a motion to approve the redevelopment plan executive summary?
I move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. So passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around.
Nice job, Steve.
Yeah, really.
No, he's not.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Oh, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all for sticking around.
Enjoy your breakfast, Steve. Are you sure you want to be with us?